Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Enjoy the fanfic, and let's begin part 11. After leaving the Hokage mansion behind, Samui had ordered Sasuke and Shikamaru to go home and pack for the trip to Taki, which they did and broke off from her and Naruto. However, Samui knew of the ulterior mission that had been given to Naruto specifically. It was one of the reasons why they were even going to Taki in the first place, but now they had an extra person going with them. Xayane continued to glance around Konoha, and even after seeing it at least more than twice, it still amazed her in some aspects. She could see kids playing in the streets of the village as well as merchants trading around while people just enjoyed the serenity. She could see a few glares towards Naruto's person and shook her head. It seems that he was still in the same boat as her in terms of people's acceptance. Xayane snapped out of her stupor as she heard her name being called. Yes, what is it? She asked, sort of embarrassed that she had not been paying attention to what was in front of her. She had seen Naruto and Samui looking at her evenly while she straightened up. Naruto wondered what had Xayane so hot and bothered, but he chose to leave it alone for another time, opting to get to the point. Pointing to himself and Samui, he spoke. Samui-chan and I were wondering where you would be staying in Konoha so that we could come get you. Just to know where you lived in case you had any place, he said, and Xayane blinked while she sighed. Xayane then shrugged her shoulders before responding, I don't have a place to stay currently. My being instated was sort of rushed and I don't think that they had the time to find me a place, but I have quite a bit of money so it shouldn't be that hard to find an apartment or something, she said, and Samui just closed her eyes and folded her arms. Hearing that just made things a lot more easier for them. Good, then it's settled for us. You will be staying with Naruto and I. Come bring your things, Samui said while she walked off. Xayane glared evenly at the blonde teen in front of her, not used to taking orders from a person younger than her, even if it was by a year or so. Feeling a pat on her shoulder, she turned her violet hair-colored head to the source, seeing Naruto grin while he scratched his cheek. Don't mind her at all, Xayane-chan. She's like that with everyone. She's sort of like you in a few aspects. I would at least believe so. It's gonna be nice living with you. I always did want to know how you live. Mumph. Naruto twitched while Xayane smothered his lips. Something possessive in her taking over. She didn't really care that Samui might have seen them, but she didn't let it last long before she left Naruto with his mouth hanging. I hope you'll at least take care of me then. Now then, idiot. Let's go and catch up to her. Though it would be rather sad if you couldn't find your own way to your house, Xayane said as she walked off while Naruto's eyebrow twitched. He would have wanted to say something about that, but for all his life, he couldn't do it. Lucky shot, he muttered, touching his lips slightly before he heard a few cat calls from the guys, but a few murmurs from the women about cheating husbands so early in marriage or something like that. Naruto's eyebrow twitched and he sighed. Great, now I have to deal with the rumors of the population. Just great for me, Naruto thought to himself as he picked his body off the floor and dusted himself off before he followed suit after Samui and Xayane, but not before taking a scroll into his hands. He looked at it intently before placing it away, sighing, and walking away. Hokage Mansion. Sarutobi smirked as he just allowed Tsunade to leave the room with a thoughtful expression on her face. Hearing what the bet was might have just secured the Godime Hokage if things would hold out for him. It could actually be said this was the day that Sarutobi could actually smile his brightest at his intellect. The secretary seemed to be the most confused by this, but she chose to ignore it and give her report. Hokage-sama, there are two people who would like to meet with you. They say that it is of utmost importance, she said, and Sarutobi coughed and composed himself while nodding his head. Ahem. Yes. Please send them in if you will, he said, and the secretary nodded her delicate head while she excused herself to go and get the two people. Sarutobi didn't have to wait long for the people to arrive, and when they came through the door he could feel the temperature in the room drop at least several degrees while a foreboding look appeared on his face while the two bowed. Thank you for seeing us, Hokage Dono. We are sorry for imposing upon you like this, but it has been our duty to ask this for the benefit of Hino Kuni. We have come to take the young master now, one of them said before he continued on through. Our records indeed state that he is the next in line, as it should have been, he said, and Hiruzen sighed. He lowered his head, not allowing the man and woman in front of him to see the kind of glare he would have loved to send. He is too young. I am sorry, but I don't believe that he can handle this responsibility. I'm afraid that I can't hand him over to you. He is under my command, Sarutobi said, and that only served to anger the female as she grabbed her sword. The man, Sarutobi, and even the woman, herself, could feel the ambush shift into an attack position, but Sarutobi shook his head while the woman spoke. Are you doubting the young master's abilities? He might be under your command, but you will not show dishonor nor disrespect to him, she said, glaring, and Sarutobi was going to respond before she spoke again. We wouldn't be here if we didn't think that he couldn't handle it. You have no right to. She stopped when a hand was raised from her partner. She sighed and shook her head. Tuka, calm yourself. Hokage Dono is right. The young master is under his command currently, and as such he is responsible for him, the man said, and the female named Tuka snorted and relieved her hand from her sword and just nodded. And I mean that he is responsible for the young master in all respects. If he dies, then Hokage Dono knows the consequences. Isn't that right, Hokage Dono? He asked while Tuka glared. Sarutobi nodded while Tuka sighed. Benui, even if that is the case, the young master, Tuka said while Benui just shook his head. Tuka grumbled and just nodded. Very well, we shall leave the young master to you, but should he die, then you will come under the full consequence of the country's punishment. Remember that, Tuka said while Sarutobi nodded. Tuka and Benui spun on their heels and walked out before Benui glared at Sarutobi, obviously more than a little displeased with how things had been turning out for him and Tuka. They obviously had much more to accomplish, but it seems that this wasn't the day. 2 years. We shall wait that long. If you have a successor, then you are to tell them of this. For when we come, whether he is under your command or not, we shall tell the young master everything and have him make his decision. Thank you for your time, Hokage Dono, Benui said with a bow of his head and closed the door while Sarutobi sighed and slumped into his chair. He shook his head left and right while he looked at the ceiling. I really am too old for this shit, he muttered to himself. 2 years, he could only wonder of the hell-raising that would come from such a thing. No doubt so many people were going to be having so many questions, but if he was lucky, then it would be Tsunade answering it all. Sorry Tsunade for what I'm about to put on you, Sarutobi said to himself as he closed his eyes to allow for just a little peace and quiet. With Naruto, Ayane and Samui, Namikaze house. Ayane remained stoic at the sight, but mentally she felt rather uncertain of the large stone walls right behind the house. She turned her head to see Naruto and Samui walking around like it was normal for them, which could only mean something. Either this was always here or that idiot made this thing. I would be more than willing to go with the latter on this, Ayane thought to herself and shook her head of those words while she shuffled her bags as Naruto opened the door for her. The sounds of her heels clattered across the wooden house. She could definitely see the similarities between her house and his. It was sort of traditional, but still held that air of importance that she could expect of a shinobi house. At least it's homey if nothing else. Very nice it is, Ayane said to herself, and she turned her head to see Samui enter the kitchen and quickly turn on the stove while placing a pot of water over it to make some tea. Once you are settled and packed for the mission, then the three of us will sit down and have a nice talk, Samui said, letting that hang in the air while Naruto shook his head with a sigh. He of course knew that things would take a turn like this, but that's the price he would pay. He really loved both Samui and Ayane dearly. The master bedroom has enough room to settle at least 3 people. It seems it was made for adequate space in mind. Do what you would like, Samui said calmly, and Ayane just nodded. She could tell that this talk was going to be about her relation to Naruto, and she all but expected it by this time. Especially when Naruto had told her that Samui knew about it, but he had continued in his kiss of her lips before he had left to go home. Very well. I can't say I didn't see this coming. I'll come down soon, Ayane said, and Samui just nodded her head while Naruto turned to see Ayane walk up the stairs. He then turned his head to see Samui around the stove, and he chuckled while he made his way over to her and gently wrapped his arms around her waist, getting a shudder from the blonde female chunin. You really have to be all cold, Samui-chan. Don't be angry, please. You're a lot more beautiful when you have that stoic look, Naruto said as he kissed her cheek. Samui sighed blissfully while Naruto rubbed her shoulder. Samui turned her head and brought Naruto into a hot kiss while she unconsciously started to grind her bottom against his shaft. Naruto groaned from his wife's touch while Samui spoke. I'm not angry. Just anxious is all. Don't worry about such a thing. It's cool, Samui said while Naruto continued to work his ministrations over her body. She sighed again while her lips and Naruto's disconnected. She laid her silky hand over Naruto's spiky hair, just reveling in the feeling before they both heard the teapot whistle loudly. Naruto grumbled while Samui seemed less than pleased about the interruption, but gently pushed Naruto back. When our mission is finished, then we shall resume. Besides, we shouldn't really do this where we can get caught, she reasoned, and Naruto agreed. The blonde eased away from his recent and newly married wife while he busied himself on the couch. He held out his hand and hissed. Immediately Samui and Naruto saw Makata come into the room, and slither into Naruto's hands. Naruto held her up and the black snake smiled and flicked her tongue at him while Naruto did the same. How does the search go? Naruto asked, and Makata shook her head while Naruto sighed. I'm not sure where to start looking for it. The current Snake Lord has exclaimed that finding the Snake Fang is going to be impossible with our current resources. The snakes naturally think that Orochi Tem has it. When he had left, the snakes had noticed that the Snake Fang was missing. It's what allows him to still summon those of us who are willing to go to him. It's how he's remained a snake summoner this long. Also, the fact that Manda Tem is with him makes it more difficult, Makata said, and Naruto just nodded again and held his head down before Makata hissed multiple times to get his attention. However, we have reason to believe that Orochimaru keeps it on his person somewhere. You'll just have to extract it and all traces of the snake contract will be void, Makata replied, and that raised the blonde's spirit while he gave a very satisfied nod. Very good, Makata. Well, you can take a break now. Besides, we have a mission soon, Naruto said, and Makata took her favorite place around Naruto's waist like a belt, but she was long enough that she was able to lift her head up and rest it on Naruto's shoulder silently. Feeling that she was right where she wanted to be, Naruto nodded to himself and turned his head to hear the clatter of shoes. He saw Ayane walk down the stairs in a dark purple tank top, and covering her legs was her mesh armor, which was also covered by a black shinobi armor that seemed fluid for her style. Around her waist were her two kodachi. She sat on the couch next to Naruto while Samui placed down tea for all three of them. We will have to make this short as we have our mission soon. Let's make this brief, she said, and Ayane nodded while Naruto took a silent sip of his cup. What do you feel for Naruto? I ask this as I will not tolerate any weak-willed woman to try and come here. It's cool with me that you like him as well, but I have my own concerns about this, Samui spoke, and Ayane glared at the wall in front of her. She took one of her long legs and propped it over the other while she folded her arms. I am fully aware of everything that has been going on. I refuse to be called weak. I have trained my hardest to get to where I have. I will not deny my feelings anymore. I will say that I love Naruto Yuhi Uzumaki, and I wish to be with him. If this is not with you wishes, then I shall break it off, but if not, then I see no consequence in my decisions, Ayane answered boldly, letting Samui judge those words. She closed her eyes and wanted to say something before she heard Ayane speak again. I have come too far to be belittled. Naruto knows my strength, she added, and Samui glanced towards Naruto, who nodded that Ayane was the real deal. She was so much the real deal that there couldn't be a replacement. I see. Well, I have told you that you will be living with us from this day forward because we'll more than likely be seeing each other a lot if this is the arrangement, and I wouldn't have it in my heart to have tried to keep you away. That is childish. Naruto has told me of your strengths as well as your qualities. I also believe that if you didn't have them, then you wouldn't be a chunin in this village. I do acknowledge it all. That is why I am discussing this sharing of Naruto with you, Samui said, and if Naruto wasn't in the middle of them both, then Ayane would have glanced to her, but purple-haired Kunoichi didn't do so. Well, if you have no problems, then I do not either, Ayane said. However, Samui wasn't finished as she stopped her speaking. The blonde stood to her feet and glanced towards Ayane. After our Taki mission, then we shall fight, right in the back of the house. I would like to see your strengths for myself, Samui said before she walked out of the door ready to go. Naruto looked down and he noticed she already finished her own tea and had placed the cup down. The blonde snickered to himself before he heard Ayane snort. Leaning against the couch, Ayane finished her own tea and sighed. She doesn't waste any time, does she? Well, I can agree with it. You don't need some weak woman who couldn't hold her own, Ayane said, and before Naruto could respond, she just kissed his cheek and stood up. I'll get it done. I'll fight her. In truth, I am curious about her strength as well, but that will have to wait. Come on. Let's get going, Ayane said, and Naruto nodded while he got up and, taking a glance at the back field of the house, groaned. Looks like I'll have to make a little ring for those two or they'll destroy the place. Not that I wouldn't do the same, but that's beside the point, Naruto thought to himself, and he could hear both Nibi and Kyuubi laughing at him from inside his mind. Stomach, or wherever they were currently before the blonde grabbed his kodachi, sealed his kidetsu into a scroll and walked out. Alternate world, with Kasumi. Kasumi narrowed her eyes in distress while she looked at Hayate's unmoving body against the futon. He hadn't woken up for a good 2 days since that time. Kasumi sighed while she stayed at his side, hearing the report from the physician, as did Shiden, who had just returned. Clearing his throat, the physician made his report. Hayate-sama has severed his spine and is in a coma of sorts. We aren't sure when he will wake up, or even if he will wake up at all, he answered gravely while Kasumi shuddered. Shiden narrowed his eyes and with a heavy outtake of breath just leaned back and folded his arms. So Raida has struck while I was away. This is distressing. Have you found out where he is? Shiden asked, and a nearby shinobi shook his head before vanishing to continue his search while Shiden turned to Kasumi. Then Kasumi, until Hayate wakes up, then you are the next one in line to become the leader of the Mugen Tenshin clan. We shall allow Hayate his rest and you will begin your training. I know it's tough, but for Hayate, you must stand tall, Shiden emphasized, and Kasumi just looked at Hayate for a little bit before shaking her head, facing her father, and nodding while she stood up and walked out of the room with Shiden following her. Hayabusa Village. Alma basked in the sunlight on the outer rims of Ryu's house while taking in the talk that Ryu and Rachel were having. Since being told by Naruto where the dragon ninja lived, then Rachel took every opportunity to see him when she could, not that Ryu had minded actually. He had grown accustomed to her visits even if they were sometimes unwarranted. Ryu just glared his head down at a table while Rachel looked at him. So that Hayate guy's village got attacked and now he's in a coma. Do you have any idea who did it? Rachel asked, more than a little concerned, while Ryu held his head up and looked out into the bright village. He could see a few people walking around, but the village was still going through its process of repair. Thankfully, Konoha had provided its services and sent a few chunin to help them build. It's not a complete source, however we cannot afford to be completely picky. The Hayabusa village and Mugen Tenshin still have a long-lasting relationship with each other. I was also one of Hayate's friends. We help each other in our time of need. It's very bad that both of our villages were attacked, so Tu-san has told me to look into it. I have only pointed him to a small ship, run by a recent franchise as well as conglomerate. Its name is DOATEC. I have no idea of its purpose, but I will be keeping an eye on it, Ryu said while Rachel nodded. Alma looked at the communication seal on her hand and flipped her body. Ryu, would you mind if I took this mission as well? Naruto-sama has asked me to be the one to tell him of the happenings in this world. I have been keeping an ear, but this seems to be a top concern at the moment, Alma said while Rachel and Ryu glanced towards her. The latter seemed to be a little concerned and the former more calculating. We don't even know what it is, Alma. Besides, we're just starting to find a fighting style for you. You might have a fiend's strength like me, but it's useless if someone avoids it, Rachel said. It was true, Alma was actually stronger than Rachel. She could swing her sister's hammer a lot faster, and harder than she could, but Alma's fighting abilities were very minor, and even then they revolved around her manipulating her fiend energy into her hits. Standing up and walking towards the entrance, Ryu turned to Alma and he nodded. Rachel is very much correct in what she says. We don't know what they want, but Raida is more than likely there. For one reason or the other. We're not sure, but we will find out. Rachel, I would like it if you could gather some information on DOATEC for me. Alma will be on standby. I could use as much help as I am able to have. However, Alma, I would like it if you didn't contact Naruto this time. There are just some things that a village should do itself, Ryu said, and when Alma wanted to retort, Rachel placed her hand on her shoulder and Alma just sighed with a nod of her head. I might not be as informative as most, but I'll look around for you. I'll come back when I have something. Give me about a week or two, Rachel said, and Ryu nodded as the blonde female fiend hunter got up and walked off before Alma stood up and glanced towards Ryu. I would like to continue my sparring, she told him, and Ryu glares at her before he nodded and took her towards one of the training areas for combat. It was going to take a bit for her to come from this alternate world, with Tayuya leaning against his chair. Yagura folded his arms while Tayuya, Suiran and Kin were together. The Sanbi Jinchuriki glared at before speaking. And what makes you so sure that Zabuza is headed to the west? It might be a ploy, he said, and Tayuya turned to Kin, who feigned nervousness and cautiously stepped forward. Suiran could feel for the girl. Going up to one of the leaders of a hidden village was very nerve-wracking. However, Kin was far from weak. During her breaks at the shop, she had found a Jonin to instruct her in taijutsu as well as kenjutsu and a few Suidan techniques to help her. The only reason that he had even helped her at all was because Kin had said that it was her dream to do trade and she wanted to go, but was scared of the horrible Kekai Genkai demons, and wanted to be able to defend herself. The fool never knew any better. Kin gulped and straightened herself out before bowing. She glanced to Tayuya, who nodded, and Kin spoke with a little bit of uncertainty in her speak. Hello Yagura-sama, I was around when Zabuza-san had infiltrated the village. I was out gathering herbs for a special soup and tea for my boss when I heard him. He said that he was going to Taki to allow for an alliance with the rebel forces. I had told the nearest shinobi in the village, and it happened to be my sister since she was down the street, Kin spoke while Yagura glared. How is it that Zabuza wasn't able to see or hear you if you could hear him? Yagura asked, and Tayuya glared at Kin, ready to pull a kunai while feigning her guard of Yagura away from a traitor. Suiran did the same, but kept cool while Kin gulped. I didn't have much chakra, so I don't think he detected me, or he did see me, but thought that no one would believe me, so he left me alone. I didn't mean any disrespect if I caused it, Kin said, and Yagura just glared before he closed his eyes. Damn paranoia to all hell. No, it is fine. I understand what you are saying. You have done well in informing us. Tayuya, Suiran, you will be escorting Kin-san towards Taki, and if you see Zabuza, then apprehend him. However, he glared towards Kin, getting the spy member to back up slightly. If he isn't there, then I will assume that this is a ploy, and I will not hesitate to end your life. Understood? Yagura asked, demanded, and Kin nodded quickly. Tayuya sighed, and Suiran did the same while Yagura dismissed them all. Leaving the room, Suiran smiled and patted Kin's shivering shoulder. Please don't think bad of Yagura-sama. He's just very cautious with this war at the moment. I doubt he would want me to, but you can calm down. Now then, Kin-san, do you know any shinobi techniques? Suiran asked, and Kin nodded. Tayuya-chan has taught me a fair share of things, as well as how to grip and throw kunai and shuriken. I also asked a Jonin to teach me some things, since I had heard that there were people near the shores who were dying because of those Kekai Genkai freaks, Kin said, and Suiran slightly frowned at the word freaks. They weren't freaks, they were people just with special abilities. Abilities that could be helping Kiri as a whole. Yagura was never this way with his people. Suiran wasn't sure, but she could feel that they were on the losing side of this war. Foregoing her thoughts on the matter in her mind, Suiran smiled. I see. Well, that's good. Tayuya-san, let's meet up with Kin-san at the gates in exactly 1 hour, Suiran said, and Tayuya nodded while they watched the Jonin walk off. Tayuya then turned to Kin and slapped her on the shoulder. The shit that you pull is so amazing sometimes. I almost actually believed that you thought they were freaks. Your acting has gotten good, Tayuya said while Kin smiled. She folded her arms and shook her head. No way, Orochimaru is a freak. I don't see anything wrong with people having special abilities. Still, that kunai trick you pulled where you were about to attack me when Yagura-san looked at me suspiciously was insane. I seriously thought you were going to gut me like a fish. Kin said, and Tayuya shook her head. You and your worries. Come on, we have an hour before we're supposed to be there, and there is a large case of root beer with my name on it. Tayuya said with a grin while Kin rolled her eyes, but nodded as the two sisters made their way out of the Mizukage mansion. With Pakura, Fu, and Maki, Sasama widened her eyes to the sudden information that had been presented to her. It was so sudden and so quick. How was she to cope with it? It just seemed too fast for her. Why are you three leaving? Sasama asked while Fu pulled the strap of her backpack, with Maki doing the same. We probably won't be gone permanently, but it'll be for a while. Sorry, but if Orochimaru is looking for us, then we're going to have to be moving as soon as possible. It's a wonder that he hasn't found this place just yet, but we can't keep banking on it. I won't put the life of my 2 students in danger, Pakura said while Fu and Maki scratched their cheeks. Sasama deflated at that news as she was just starting to like them. They never told her much, but she didn't ask much except from either Maki or Fu, but even then the two held their secrets that they wouldn't answer. It confused Sasama, but she went with it. Shifting in her seat slightly, she scratched her cheek. Then when you do return, will you guys find me? I have a friend that I would like you guys to meet. I also have my brother, even though he's a little shifty sometimes. You would like him, please? Sasama asked. She never had that many friends and they seemed like good company. Fu and Maki turned to their sensei for advice while Pakura sighed. She gave a small smile, but it quickly vanished while she remained stoic. We'll try to find you if we ever do return. Take care of yourself. You may use this place if you like, Pakura said as Fu closed the door, leaving Sasama in a lonely room, but she brightened up knowing that she would see them again. Maybe next time they could tell her just what they were doing with no secrets this time, but she wouldn't hold her breath if they couldn't. Akatsuki Base. The 9 members of Akatsuki gathered around the 10 fingers, leaving only one, which was the forever spot of Orochimaru and his betrayal of Akatsuki, but if it was thought about, then it made sense. A bunch of S-rank criminals who had betrayed their villages were shocked over the betrayal of a former comrade. Karma could be a bitch to anyone and they would just have to handle it. Pain looked around the room and he noticed that Kisame and Zetsu were the most pissed off or annoyed of everyone there, and that was saying something because almost no one could be more annoyed with their partners than Kakuzu and Hidan. It was just how much they were stressed. Deciding to get to the point, Pain glanced towards the 2 Akatsuki members and spoke. Kisame, Zetsu, what is your report on the Nanabi Jinchuriki? Pain asked and everyone glanced to them while Kisame scoffed and folded his arms. Itachi, having worked with Kisame before, knew that it actually took quite a bit to annoy Kisame, so this was new. Seeing that Kisame wasn't going to answer their leader, Zetsu shook his head at his partner and said, well, Leader Sama, we had gone to Taki as you know, but it seems that the Nanabi Jinchuriki is somewhere out in the world as she had deserted her village. Taki is in disarray at the moment. Kisame figured that they were lying and well, you can guess what he did. Since then we have not seen the Nanabi Jinchuriki, Black Zetsu said while Pain and the others glared. Hidan chuckled at their misfortune while Kisame glared at him, but didn't say anything. Who knew that you would have such troubles from a little girl, Deidara said, and that further pissed Kisame off, but the shark swordsman kept his cool and tried not to say anything, though Samahata was just itching to try and tear Deidara up. Pain just took it all in stride and nodded while he turned to his former partner and Itachi. And what of you two? He asked, and Konan wasn't sure, but she could feel just a little bit of impatience in the Akatsuki leader's voice. So she just decided to speak. We have not yet seen the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, but we know that from a recent source, that he is on his way to Taki to send them a sort of document. Itachi-san and I were planning to apprehend him as quickly as possible while trying to remain discreet to the rest of his team, Konan said, and Pain nodded. Very good. See that it is done. Also, see that you don't fail. I accept no failures from anyone, he told them, and he quickly left while others began to file out. It soon left only Konan and Itachi in the room, and Itachi turned to see Konan in deep thought. Deciding to be the curious one today, Itachi managed to get the words out of his mouth after a few seconds of silence. Is something on your mind? He asked her, and Konan turned to him. Itachi wasn't sure, but he thought he saw some form of sadness in Konan's eyes before they were quickly masked by an expression of seriousness. I will be fine. No, nothing is wrong. Come, Itachi, Taki is our next search, Konan said, and Itachi agreed as the two faded out as well, but not before Konan looked at the place where Pain had been standing for a majority of this little meeting, which wasn't even that long. Nagato, Konan thought to herself before she shook her head and faded right behind Itachi. With Platoon 13, 2 days later. Platoon 13 dropped to the ground from the trees and stood before the village hidden in the waterfalls, while Ayane stretched her body slightly. While Yashi was used to all of the aspects of a shinobi that they had to endure, she didn't think that running was their only means of transportation. At least in her world they had boats, cars, or a plan, but here it was nothing. Not that she really complained. This type of environment was really good for the body. No wonder she felt more in tune with nature than in her world. Shikamaru grumbled and sat against a tree while he huffed slightly while Sasuke and Naruto shook their heads. Samui didn't really pay it much of a mind as Omoi was the same way. It seemed that there was at least one person like this in every village. Did we finally make it? Shikamaru asked. They had been pushing the 3-day journey and shortened it to 2 only because Sasuke, Samui, Ayane and Naruto had decided to race there. It was all just too troublesome for Shikamaru as he had been forced to keep up with them all. He had to give Ayane credit though, even without the use of chakra she had kept up, and sometimes surpassed, them all in the race. Ayane rolled her eyes and folded her arms under her very impressive bust. Is everyone in your village like him? In the Mugen Tenshin clan such a lazy guy wouldn't last long, Ayane said, and Shikamaru didn't even care that Naruto snickered. Sasuke didn't pay it a mind, but Samui's eyes showed amusement. Troublesome woman. Man, why did we have to have another girl on our team? It's such a drag, Shikamaru said, looking up at the clouds since it was his favorite pastime. Ayane shook her head while Naruto just told her to ignore him. In truth, Ayane wanted to smack the laziness out of him, but Naruto had told her trying to smack the laziness out of Inara was like trying to get a wide grin out of Ryu. It just wasn't possible, and that was one thing that Ayane could agree on with her lover. Trust me, Ayane-chan, what Shikamaru doesn't do in physical work he makes up for in strategy. He's actually the smartest guy on this team at the moment. Don't let him bother you. He's really cool when you know him, Naruto said, and Ayane just grumbled, but acquiesced to Naruto's response. She really didn't feel like fighting it out either while Shikamaru basked in the sunlight. However, having enough of the Nara's attitude for one day as it was working on his nerves, Sasuke just sighed and folded his arms also. Well, you can stop with your complaining. We're here now. Are you happy? The difficult part is done for us and now all we have to do is walk towards the mansion and deliver the letter. Sheesh, you're lazy can complain, Sasuke said while Shikamaru just shrugged his shoulders, not really caring what was said to him. Ino had more than said that about him, and after a few times he had learned to tune it out. Naruto suddenly fidgeted and slowly moved away from the group. Right, well, you guys do that. I have to check on something. I will be back soon, Naruto said, and before the others could retort or stop him, the blonde vanished in a leaf shunshin while Sasuke was about to curse at the top of his voice for them not being able to get anything done until Samui stopped him. Don't mind Naruto. He has a separate mission from us that I was informed of. We'll just do this part and he will do the other. Ayane-san, could you please go after him? Love him I do, but someone's has to watch out for him. I'd like you to do it, Samui said, and Ayane glanced at her before she shrugged her shoulders, did a few hand gestures, and vanished in a whirl of wind, leaving a befuddled Sasuke and Shikamaru while Samui turned around and made her way through the waterfall and into the village with Sasuke right behind her and a less than pleased Shikamaru, but he relented, got up and walked off to catch up to the others. With Ayane and Naruto. Having caught up to Naruto and explaining the situation, the blonde nodded and walked through the woods with Ayane right behind him. He really had no qualms with her coming to see his network. Honestly, it would make him happy. He had sent a file to Samui about all the members that he had that didn't include the ones that he had sent to Sarutobi or Jiraiya. Something just told him that in the future he would be so happy that he did do this. Just try not to freak them out. I'm sure that they won't be expecting me as their master. Some are a little new to it and haven't seen me just yet, Naruto said, and Ayane just shrugged. That's all right with me. Though I'm not that intimidating. I try not to be to those that I won't kill, Ayane said, and Naruto grinned before he snaked his hand and gave a quick smack to her, getting a rise and a blush out of Ayane as she had never had that done before. And yet, it felt good. You are so gonna pay for that, she said as she rubbed her cheeks while Naruto felt his hand. Nope, you're not that intimidating when you don't want to be, Ayane-chan. It's just that you are really cold. Which is really cool to me. Trust me, nothing's wrong with you as you are. Just like you're firm, Naruto said, and Ayane's eyebrow twitched, but she took that as a compliment and not an insult. It felt good to actually be touched, that was so long as it was someone that she had feelings for. Her feelings for Hayate hadn't disappeared, but they had greatly died down to where she just saw him as a very good brother or half-brother and almost nothing more. Oh, I'm glad that you think so, Ayane said, punching Naruto in the shoulder, which got a wince from the blonde while he rubbed it gently. He turned to see Ayane smirk while he just gave a cheeky grin as they made their way through the forest, just enjoying their alone time, which made them both wonder if Samui had decided on this. However, their time together didn't last long before both Naruto heard a voice that made his voice shiver. Naruto Uzumaki. We have been looking for you, Itachi said from his place on top of a tree while Konan stood next to him. Both took in Naruto's form while the blonde glared at the both. Ayane was about to ask if these people were the spy network that he had mentioned, but from the blonde's face then she could tell that she was dead wrong. Itachi, I didn't think I would actually get the pleasure of seeing you. When Sasuke told me how he encountered you, then I thought it wouldn't be very long from me as well. I have to admit, you can really stay hidden, Naruto said while Itachi glared at him. Konan did the same and Naruto moved in front of Ayane. Ayane-chan, trust me when I say this. We have to get away from here. These two are way stronger than me. On the left is Itachi Uchiha. He's the one who killed off his entire clan in a single night. Don't let him fool you, as he's probably as strong as Ryu, if not stronger, Naruto said, and Ayane glared at the man in front of her, but neither Ayane nor Naruto could identify the woman next to him. Seeing that they were paying attention to her, Konan decided to speak. I am Konan. Kyuubi Jinchuriki. We're going to have to ask that you come with us. Resistance is futile. You are part of a grand plan, a plan to bring peace to the world under the rule of God. Submit, she said, and Naruto narrowed his eyes while Kyuubi and Nibi did the same. Who does this bitch think she is? She'd better be lucky I'm not out there or I would show her what for, Nibi said while Kyuubi got up from his personal chair and walked outside. He changed the mindscape to his favorite demonic setting. It helped him concentrate in a fight. His nine tails thrashed around while he settled, waiting for his partner to strike while he would back him up. Naruto would need it. Naruto snorted and shook his head. Sorry, but I submit to no one that plans to kill me. Whatever you plan on using Kurama for, then you'd better think twice. You aren't taking me, Naruto shouted, but he tried to remain calm as he decided to forego his Kodachi and give his Kidetsu a test run in his world. Naruto drew the blade from its sheath and held it with a calm demeanor while Ayane took out her Kodachi ready to back Naruto up. Naruto quickly lunged for Konan, deciding not to waste his time in trying to attack Itachi, but Itachi moved faster than Naruto and appeared to intercept him before he noticed Ayane jump over Naruto's back as she used him for leverage. Naruto flung her forward and Ayane quickly sent her Kodachi forward while Itachi took out a kunai and clashed it to her swords. Naruto fell to the ground and coughed before turning back. Don't look at his eyes, Ayane-chan, if you do then it's game over. Naruto shouted, and Ayane took those words to heart. She was used to fighting blind or looking elsewhere on the body to attack anyway. She quickly backed away and threw a kunai at Itachi and Konan as it slammed into the tree branch beneath their feet. Both looked down while Ayane smirked as the kunai exploded. Not bad, but not good enough, Itachi said before he kicked Ayane in the chin, sending her back. However, she didn't get far as Itachi grabbed her throat. Ayane coughed and Naruto moved to intercept before a wall of paper surrounded him while he cursed at the top of his voice. You aren't going anywhere. Stop this futile resistance, Konan said, but Naruto wasn't having any of that as he smirked. He wasn't looking at Itachi and Itachi's attention wasn't focused on him as he swiftly did some hand signs. Kaden. Kitsune Enden, fire release. Fox flame bullet, Naruto shouted as he sent a wave of fire onto the paper in front of him. Konan glared before she moved her hand to get the papers out of the way as they were very much a part of her body. She was able to recollect in time, but Naruto's jutsu kept going as it sped towards Itachi. The elder Uchiha jumped out of the way, still holding Ayane, or so he assumed, as Itachi turned his head to see that Ayane was gone and in her place was a little stick. Ayane appeared at the top of the trees where she did some hand gestures while Itachi followed her. His Sharingan tried to mimic her movements, but something was wrong. He couldn't copy this. Well, he could, but the energy required to do this he didn't have. Ayane's hands started to glow from her power while Itachi finished his signs for a Kaden technique. Haijutsu. Reku Jinpu Satsu. Ayane shouted and sent a straight blast of lightning at Itachi while the Uchiha finished. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, Itachi said and sent a large ball of fire at Ayane's technique. The two collided against each other, but Itachi was surprised as the lightning effortlessly pierced the fire and continued towards until the ground exploded. Ayane dropped her hands before she turned to see Naruto trying to dodge the paper shuriken that had continued to rip apart his torso. Damn it, I have to assist Naruto or we're not going to last long, Ayane said to herself before she stared down at the smoke to see Itachi just glaring at her. Great, I guess I didn't get him after all. Damn, she thought and quickly began to make her countermeasures. Meanwhile, Naruto rapidly healed up things to Kyuubi, helping him out while a single tail appeared behind him. Konan didn't seem to be very intrigued at this as she had expected it. You are only delaying the inevitable. Why do you resist to be a part of the greater plan as the bridge to peace? She asked before she dodged a sword strike from Naruto. The blonde turned his head to her. He might have been fighting to survive, but he had been thinking on her words. You keep talking about peace, then why don't you tell me what you plan on doing with Kyuubi if you take him? And that's one hell of an if, Naruto said, and Konan just glared evenly at him. Once we have you and the other 8 Jinchuriki, we shall unite them into the ultimate weapon. We will launch it upon the nations. All will cower under it and they will know pain. Once people realize what that power is, then they will be terrified to use it, resulting in the peace that we have hoped to achieve, Konan said, and Naruto just blinked. Once, twice, thrice. Kyuubi and Nibi glanced to each other and the blonde just stared at her before Konan saw his eyes grow cold as the temperature as a whole just dropped. He gripped his sword tighter while it started to cackle in white lightning. That lightning quickly turned dark purple while Naruto shook his head. Is that what we are to you? Just animals to be hunted by you so you can intimidate people? I thought that someone as smart looking as you would give me a good if not the best reason. I have only one word for you. Pathetic, Naruto said, and for some reason Konan felt a piece of her soul shudder at the way he said that. You are no better than anyone who wants to take advantage of power to corrupt the world. The true way to peace to stop fighting, not destroy the damn world. You really think such power can be mastered? You really think that the Jubi would let you do that? Let me tell you something, lady. Kyuubi taught me about the Rakudo Sennin and the Jubi. It took the Rakudo Sennin himself lady, to stop it. Not kill it, stop it. He was the first Jinchuriki. You really think that such power can be controlled? It can't. I doubt even one person in your organization is on his level. Stop deluding yourself. All you're doing is casting a genjutsu over reality with that plan, Naruto said, and he immediately winced as a paper shuriken grazed his cheek. He cursed and touched it before he noticed Konan's cold eyes. A human like you could never understand God's plan. There is no such thing a true peace. The world will be forced to grow up, to know that there is only pain. The only way to peace is through pain, Konan said while Naruto shook his head. If the way to peace was through pain, then we would have had peace by this time. I can tell, Konan, that you are far from stupid, but you're blinded. You see true peace as being no such thing, because you have stopped trying. Never stop trying. It might not come in our lifetimes, but the world will know peace. I know it will. The world will grow up when it's ready. You can rush it, Naruto told her. Konan glared at him evenly. The papers surrounded Naruto while the blonde held up a hand sign. Kai! Naruto shouted as he exploded. The explosion shocked Konan and forced her to jump back before she turned to see Naruto dash off for Ayane's position. Konan mentally cursed herself for lacking in her sight before she had a lingering though. You see peace as no such thing, because you have stopped trying. Never stop trying. Those words stayed in her head as she threw a shuriken. Nagato, have we stopped trying? Konan asked in her thoughts as she and Naruto saw Itachi quickly kick Ayane into the ground. Ayane huffed and growled before she noticed Itachi ready to do another blast of hand signs before Naruto appeared in front of her and did the same. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, Itachi shouted while Naruto finished his own technique in time as well. He took a deep breath of air and shouted. Kaden. Kitsune Enden, Naruto bellowed, and the two Kaden techniques slammed into each other as they tried to outdo the other. Konan stood next to Itachi. Naruto skidded back from the pressure while Ayane continued to watch. Itachi's jutsu began to push Naruto's back while the blonde mentally cursed. However, flames soon stopped and Itachi lunged for Naruto and hoisted him into the air. Naruto gritted his teeth while Itachi remained impassive. Now do you see that it is futile? Itachi asked, and Konan was already beginning to have her second thoughts about this before Naruto suddenly threw his kidetsu into the air. Itachi's eyes never left Naruto's form and he saw Blonde mumble something. Go for it, Kit. Remember all the information that Sasuke ever told you. Kyuubi encouraged and Nibi did the same while Naruto held up a hand sign. Immediately everyone watched as the ground changed into a land of fire. Naruto coughed and hacked a little more before Itachi looked up and he saw hundreds of kidetsu around them all while Naruto smirked. He concentrated his chakra on Itachi and spoke. His name is Itachi Uchiha. He is the brother of Sasuke Uchiha as well as the son of Fugaku Uchiha and Makoto Uchiha. The kidetsu launched themselves at Itachi before the Uchiha jumped out of the way to avoid them. His Sharingan worked overtime to dispel the illusion place on him, but it was no illusion. Itachi widened his eyes while Naruto continued. Itachi is the one behind the Uchiha massacre. He killed his family under the orders of the Sandaime Hokage. He spared Sasuke and Makoto so that he would pay for his crimes. He later joined Akatsuki falling down the path. Naruto continued and a kidetsu grazed Itachi's shoulder before he blocked the others with a kunai and Naruto finished. He has awoken his Sharingan and evolved it into a Mangekyo Sharingan. The Sharingan to first be unlocked by Madara Uchiha and Izuna Uchiha, Naruto said, and the kidetsu reigned over Itachi as his Sharingan couldn't even begin to count them as they slashed his body and embedded themselves into his legs, arms, feet, chest and any other place. Itachi coughed and fell to one knee while Konan watched. Megan. Kotoba no Chikara, Naruto said as he dropped to the ground. Ayane quickly ran to his side while Itachi watched the kidetsu fade from his body. The scars were there, but the blades were gone and Itachi watched as the kidetsu dropped to the ground, harmless. What was that? Itachi thought to himself. A genjutsu? No. Then a ninjutsu? No, it wasn't that either. A technique that he couldn't dispel. What kind of trick was that supposed to be? This was preposterous. Insane even. The Sharingan was the strongest dojutsu to be known. How could it not have dispelled something like that? Konan, seeing the Itachi's confusion and frustration, quickly walked up to a huffing Naruto and both watched as Ayane stood between her and Naruto with her kodachi at the ready. Sorry, but this isn't your fight, Konan said as she swiftly moved towards Ayane, ready to cut her down before she was shocked as a kick planted itself into her face sending her flying while Itachi watched on. He was also forced to dodge a wave of sand as he backed away. However, he couldn't catch a break as he heard two shouts. Sweden. Suiryuden no Jutsu. Futon. Rinkuden wind release. Drilling air bullet. Again Itachi and Konan were forced to dodge a large water dragon and a huge blast of wind as they backed away. Ayane and Naruto looked up and the sight made Naruto grin as Pakura, Zabuza, and Gaara came to his and Ayane's aid. Zabuza grinned and grabbed the hilt of his sword. So this is our master, huh? A little runt, isn't he? But he did a very good job. Sorry, but you're not taking him, Zabuza said while Gaara nodded. Pakura immediately summoned 3 fireballs and launched them at Itachi and Konan, making the 2 backflip away. Neither was expecting that, nor the sight of the Ikibi Jinchuriki in front of them. Konan narrowed her eyes while Itachi stood to his feet, though it hurt to do so. Gaara turned his head to Naruto and the blonde smiled while Gaara placed a hand on his shoulder. Are you all right? Gaara asked and Naruto nodded as he stood to his feet. Never better, Naruto responded as he quickly stood to his feet. Gaara nodded while everyone else got ready for a fight. Seeing their options were limited and that they didn't count on this, Konan and Itachi turned to each other. They both nodded and reluctantly gave up as even they couldn't handle this much. Not the hero of Suna nor the demon of the mist. Itachi, we will pull back and leave. We are in no condition to take them all, and if we attract any more attention then no doubt Taki will know. We're not ready for a war. Let's go, Konan said and Itachi agreed. You escaped this day, Naruto-kun, but don't think it will happen again, he said, and the two quickly faded out as their presence already vanished from the area. Zabuza withdrew his sword while Gaara's sand regressed into the ground. Pakura relaxed and the Ikibi Jinchuriki took Naruto's arm and placed him over his shoulder. Man, thanks for the save. You guys are lifesavers, Naruto said while Pakura and Zabuza just shrugged. Gaara remained impassive while they guided him towards the house. That's where everyone was except for Tayuya and Kin, who were still coming. Naturally, they had told that they were coming, except that Suiren was to come with them. It was something that they had to do. There was nothing that could be done about it. You're damn right we are. Sheesh, we could see those explosions from the house. It was a pain in the, but glad you're alright. Can't have you kicking the bucket just yet, Zabuza said, and Naruto nodded before Ayane handed him a spiritual elixir. She had taken about a dozen with her for such cases. Naruto drank the bitter liquid and sighed with a smile as Kyuubi and the elixir sped his healing while he felt good enough to walk. Come on, let's get to the house and nurse up Ayane-chan. It'll be good to see you guys again, Naruto said as he dashed off with Pakura helping Ayane across the trees. Spy base. Fu and Maki smiled as they shook hands with Haku, Temari and Konkuro. It felt weird being from different villages and yet having this in common, that they all wanted to make their world a better place. They all made themselves comfortable around the house as they waited for Pakura, Zabuza and Gaara to return after seeing the large explosions and the fierce fires. Fu blushed and rubbed the back of her head, obviously not used to people being so accepting of her presence before. Wow, this feels weird. I can't believe that I got to meet such people. I honestly thought that people were all like those in my village. Just heartless bastards, but I'm glad to be wrong. You have a cool fan, Temari-san. Would you mind teaching me some futon techniques? Pakura-sensei does do it, but I think I could learn from a wind expert, Fu said, grinning widely, and Temari smiled with a sure nod while she propped one leg over the other. Temari then grinned and spoke. That's fine with me. I would like to. However, I don't go easy on anyone. Still, I've always wanted to know what it was like to teach someone before, Temari said while Konkuro rolled his eyes. Everyone continued to converse until they noticed the door open. Everyone tensed before Fu and Haku saw someone they had never seen before. That blonde hair and those clothes, right along with those whisker marks. Right behind him came Zabuza, Pakura, Gaara, and another woman that she didn't know. Naruto grumbled to a laughing Zabuza, along with an amused Ayane, Pakura and Gaara. I told you that I had it under control, Datbeo. I was planning to lead them into a trap when I would showcase my awesomeness. You just had to interrupt the best part, Naruto said while Zabuza rolled his eyes. Sure. Whatever you say, brat. We saved you and there is no denying it at all. You owe us, Zabuza said while Naruto pouted. He turned to see Temari, Konkuro, and Maki wave. Naruto waved back and sat in a chair while Pakura placed Ayane next to his chair. She already began to patch her up while Zabuza sat down and Gaara closed the door. Fu, deciding to be nice to the newcomer, held out her hand. Wow, you're someone that I've never seen before at all. You look cool. Are you a part of this as well? Oh well duh, you would be. You're here after all, Fu said while Naruto chuckled. He watched Pakura give Ayane some medicine, and when he was sure that she was okay, he stood up and placed his hand on her chest. Ninpo. Ryumyu no Jutsu, ninja technique. Power of divine life technique, Naruto said, and Ayane's chest flowed with chakra and life while her wounds healed and she leaned up from the chair while Naruto turned around. Well, I guess you could say that I'm a part of it. After all, I made this network, Naruto said to her, and Fu widened her eyes while Haku seemed surprised. She turned to Zabuza, who nodded, and she stared back. Why you? But you're no older than me. How are you able to manage this entire? Fu paused while Naruto held up his hand. He turned to Zabuza and Haku, ready to ask a question of his own. Where are Tayuya and Kin? He asked, and Zabuza glanced towards Haku. She cleared her throat and straightened her voice since she was talking to her spy master and leader. Tayuya-san said that they were coming as fast as they could, but they are coming with her Jonin-sensei, who is looking for Zabuza-sama. Apparently they said that if they don't see Zabuza, then Tayuya-san's partner, Kin, will die, Haku said, and a few collective gasps were heard while Naruto and Zabuza narrowed their eyes. Well, this can't begin without them, and you received this message a day ago, right? Naruto asked, and Haku nodded while the blonde sighed and shook his head to think. He decided to get a few things out of the way first. He grabbed Haku's hand, erased the seal Tayuya wrote, and placed the real one of the communication seal. He then did the same to Zabuza, Pakura, Maki, Fu, Tamari, Gaara and Kankuro. He then did it to himself. What about her? Fu asked, pointing to Ayane, and Naruto turned to her. Ayane glanced to him and she noticed Naruto's warm smile and just leaned back down to the couch while Naruto cleared his throat again. She's different. Don't worry, she won't do anything. 'Cause she just loves me so much, don't you, Ayane-chan? Naruto asked while Kankuro grinned along with Zabuza while Maki and Fu had the right idea to at least blush. You idiot, Ayane said, turning over and going to sleep. Well, not really. She did want to know what they were all going to talk about. Naruto grinned at her response and shrugged his shoulders while cracking his knuckles. Well then, if they want Zabuza then we'll give him to her. Pakura-san. Zabuza, Kankuro. Come with me and listen to this plan, Naruto said while Pakura, Zabuza and Kankuro came closer. Naruto whispered into their ears while Zabuza widened his mouth into a big grin behind his mask while Pakura just widened her eyes and Kankuro snickered. Got it? Naruto asked and they nodded. They will be here in an hour if not a few minutes. We'd better hurry up then, Pakura said and Naruto agreed as he opened the door and they walked out while leaving the others in the room with Haku praying for Zabuza's safety. With Tayuya and Kin, somewhere near Taki. Kin gulped along with Tayuya as they kept up their pace through Taki as they followed Suiran through the trees. Tayuya, what are we going to do? We're nearing the house and we have no sign of Zabuza. She really might kill me, Kin whispered while Tayuya growled and balled her fists. Damn, this wasn't working out like it was supposed to. She could knock the bitch out. This woman was a jonin and a pretty damn good one at that. No doubt she would see it coming. I'll come up with something, Kin, Tayuya said while Kin just gulped. They quickly began to race before Suiran's eyes spotted something. She quickly grabbed her sword and glared daggers while she dropped to the ground. Zabuza, so you are here. It's over for you, Suiran said while the demon of the mist chuckled. Tayuya and Kin dropped to the ground in surprise to see Zabuza near a pond. He turned to them and the missing nin shook his head. No, you got it wrong, Suiran. It's over for you. That's who it's over for, Zabuza said as he grabbed his sword. Suiran was ready to charge before Zabuza grinned and shot off into the trees. Suiran widened her eyes to the sudden retreat before she turned back to Tayuya. Tayuya, take Kin somewhere safe. I'll engage Zabuza. Hurry up now, Suiran said as she shot off, leaving Kin and Tayuya in the middle of the clearing with a, what the just happened, look on their faces. Suiran chased after Zabuza as she heard his cackling. The torment of his voice in her ears as she tried to catch up to him. Suiran took 3 Senbon and threw them at Zabuza. She was surprised that they actually hit him, but a hit was a hit and she watched as Zabuza cursed and dropped to the ground. He leaned up against a tree while Suiran took her sword. Now who's got it wrong? It's not me, Zabuza. I'm sorry, but you made your choice. Now live with it, Suiran shouted as she stuck her sword through Zabuza's body. However, she widened her eyes and noticed that it was hollow. No blood was leaking and there wasn't a pained scream. She saw it was a puppet just looking at her. Too slow, Suiran, Zabuza said as he swung his sword overhead. Suiran quickly blocked it with her own sword and growled under the weight of Zabuza's own body before the sparks flew from their weapons. She could see Zabuza's mysterious grin and wondered what it meant before he spoke. Looks like you still need more training, Suiran. Should have made sure that your back was covered, Zabuza said while Suiran gasped. She didn't turn around fast enough before a heavy slam came to her neck courtesy of Pakura while Suiran dropped to the ground, unconscious. Zabuza placed his sword on his back while Kankuro and Naruto came out. Tayuya and Kin dropped to the ground and sighed. Son of a bitch, you guys cut that one too close. Nice one, Tayuya said and Kin nodded, sort of happy to see Naruto again before they heard weeping. Everyone saw Kankuro crying over one of his decoy puppets that they had masked while Zabuza smirked. That plan was flawless. Anyone wanna bet that she's going to be pissed when she wakes up? Zabuza asked and everyone sighed, not wanting to be reminded of such a thing at the moment. Naruto and Tayuya said a quick hello to each other while Zabuza knelt down and picked up the knocked out Suiran. So what do we do with her? Zabuza asked and Naruto thought for a second. He then snapped his fingers in realization and with a smirk he spoke. The house has a basement, I think. Put her in there and tie her to a chair. I will speak with her when she comes to. Also, no one make any sudden moves when she's awake. Like Zabuza said, she's going to be pissed when she realizes the predicament that she's in, Naruto said, and everyone else agreed before they calced themselves and shot off for the house, leaving the scene of the excursion. Ugh, what hit me? Suiren asked herself before she opened her eyes. She had been running with Tayuya and Kin through the woods trying to find, that's right. She had found Zabuza. They had a little fight and she got ambushed. She'd let her guard down like an amateur. How embarrassing for her. Suiren tried to move, but she noticed that her legs, chest and arm were tied to a chair. She couldn't access her chakra and all of her weapons were gone. Just great, Suiren said to herself. She could at least tell that she was in the basement of some place, but as for where that place was, then she didn't know. She also didn't know what time it was nor how long she had been unconscious. She struggled against the ropes before she heard a violent hiss. Upon closer inspection, Suiren widened her eyes to seeing that at her feet were precisely 4 snakes. 2 pythons, a constrictor, and lastly a black mamba. Odds for her, she was. Suiren stopped moving and the serpents stopped their hissing. It seemed that they wouldn't hurt her so long as she stayed still. That either meant that Zabuza and the resistance captured her and we looking to keep her alive for intel, which she wouldn't give, or Zabuza had left her to bandits, which he really wouldn't do. Suiren might have felt minor anger to her former friend for where his alliance was, but she knew him better than that. That still didn't help her odds. Oh good, you're awake. That saves me some time, a voice echoed and Suiren raised her head to see a lone figure leaning against the wall. He couldn't have been older than her, yet he held himself with a certain amount of authority. His cold blue eyes, and his defiant whisker marks on the sides of his cheek. He stepped into the light and walked in front of Suiren. Who are you? Suiren asked while Naruto snorted. He walked circles around her, making Suiren more than a little anxious. He then came to an abrupt stop and shook his head. You don't need to know that right now. All that you need to know is that if you cooperate then you will not die, Naruto responded dangerously, and while Suiren wasn't one to take such a threat from someone younger than her seriously, the cold look in his eyes told her very well that he could back up that statement. HMPH, if you're with Kiri's resistance then you're not getting anything out of me. You will be wasting your time. Just kill me, Suiren yelled while Naruto turned his back to her. He shook his head back and forth. The weak don't get to choose their deaths. Is your life worth that little? It's no wonder you were captured, Naruto said while Suiren widened her eyes. She would have retorted, but Naruto didn't give her the chance to do so. You might not talk now, but I doubt it will matter. I've got time, Naruto said, and Suiren watched him climb the stairs and walk through the door. Suiren sighed and just closed her eyes for a little bit. Now she was a little more irritated. Why, you ask? Well, she was hungry. With Naruto. Naruto closed the door to the basement and made his way through the halls of the abandoned Great Shinobi War Refuge. He came into the living room to see everyone else looking at him expectantly. As you would figure, she's not going to talk. However, she's not as pissed as I thought she might be, Naruto said, getting everyone else to sigh. Yeah, the bitch is very resilient. I can attest to that one. Of course, there is a reason that she's a Junin, Tayuya said, getting a nod from Naruto. He sat next to xAyane, who had been feeling a little more rested. It had been a good 12 hours since Suiren's capture. In that time, Tayuya and Kin got acquainted with the others while Naruto and xAyane returned to Platoon 13. Naruto had informed Samui of what he had been doing, and Samui had claimed that their mission was successful and they would meet up when Naruto was finished with his business. In fact, Naruto had told her that he wanted her, Sasuke and Shikamaru to come to the house by tomorrow afternoon, since Samui had told him of Sasuke and Shikamaru's suspicions. It wouldn't do good for him to leave his team in the dark. So what are you going to do with her, Naruto-san? Haku asked, and everyone seemed to want to know that as well. Naruto folded his arms and stayed silent for a few seconds. These were a few recent developments that he hadn't foreseen. He knew better than to say that everything was always 100% successful, but he wished that he had seen it coming. For right now, I will watch her. Besides, it's late and she's tired. It won't do good to aggravate her anymore. Now then, Gaara, what is this about Suna? Naruto asked, and everyone turned to the Suna siblings. Gaara and his siblings glared at the ground for a little bit. They turned to Maki, who flinched, while Pakura narrowed her eyes. Right. Well, Suna's council is currently commanding all shinobi for a widespread search of Maki. No one knows why, but with her being a missing nin, then they don't know why it's taking this long to apprehend her. Obviously they don't know that Pakura-san is alive. To which I must express my apologizes for what Suna has done to you, Gaara said. Pakura stayed silent, but gave a short nod before Gaara continued. Some shinobi ask why a genin is important, but since we have no case cage, then the council's orders are the law of the village, Gaara finished. Naruto nodded and he turned to Maki. Do you know anything, Maki-san? Naruto asked and Maki shuddered. She really didn't want to talk about it and everyone noticed the uncomfortable silence. Maki frowned while her hands shivered. She then saw two hands over hers. She looked up and saw Pakura's smile and Fu's nod. She then saw Naruto's own smile. No one here will think any less of you. Please tell me, Naruto said and Maki nodded as she closed her eyes. It took a few seconds, but everyone noticed the dark rings form around her eyes while Gaara widened his eyes. Temari and Konkuro gasped as Maki opened her eyes. Instantly black sand seeped from the floor and swirled around in the air before it gently slid into her hands. Naruto and the others seemed thoroughly surprised by what they had just seen. Temari jumped to her feet. Maki, do you know what you just did? Temari asked, shouted and Maki nodded. Temari was ready to shout something, anything, before a slow hand from Gaara steadied her reaction. She sat back down and calmed herself. The iron sand of the Sandame cage of Sunagakure no Sato. That's incredible. She's got the Jiten as well as Satetsu. That's incredible, Maki. You're related to the Sandame cage. Konkuro said and Maki blushed from the immediate praise. It wasn't something that she was expecting. Gaara stood to his feet and he took Maki's hand. He opened it and everyone watched as Maki's iron sand mixed with Gaara's own regular sand. Iron sand was heavier than sand. The metallic properties in iron made it also denser than sand, making it incredible for defense. It was tougher than Gaara's armor. I'm not familiar with this stuff. Was the problem with what she's doing? Ayane asked while everyone glanced at her incredulously. Hey, it wasn't her fault. She hadn't been to this world or she hadn't stayed in it for very long to know of all this shit. Seeing her annoyed face, Pakura decided to explain to quell the rising anger of the purple-haired Kunoichi and explained. Well, you see, Ayane-san, as you must know, there are 5 elemental affinities. Fire, water, lightning, wind, and earth. All in a cycle. There are only these 5, but in rare cases then there are those who have more than one affinity. They are able to combine their elements into ones known as Kekkei Genkei or bloodline limits. It would be like Haku-san and myself. Haku-san has Hyoten, ice release, which is a combination of wind and water. I have Shikuden, scorch release, which is a combination of fire and wind. Kekkei Genkei can't be taught or copied, but it is possible for people of different nations to have the same Kekkei Genkei, Pakura explained and Ayane nodded in some fascination. No wonder Naruto seemed so much more experienced than her, which really wasn't true. He was just more in tune with his chakra than her. Alright, I understand. So this, iron sand, is not something that can normally be manipulated, so it's a shock for you all, Ayane said and people nodded while she leaned back. She wondered what her own affinities might be. So that means that Maki-san has a relation to the Sandame cage. Maybe that's what Suna wants her for. No one in their right mind wouldn't want a relative to the Sandame in their village. Hell, Maki or Gaara could take the cage position, Temari said while Gaara and Maki stared at each other. But I'm not a leader. I don't want that position. I left with Pakura-sensei. Also, I don't know my relation to the Sandame. I'm sorry I can't be of help, Maki said meekly while everyone shook their heads. Ma, you can't help it. Nothing can be done right now. Say, does Suna have an archive? Naruto asked and Konkuro nodded. Yeah, we do. It's way back to the library, but we have one. Why? Konkuro asked and Naruto propped one leg over the other. I need one of the 3 of you to go to that archive and search for anything you can find on the Sandame before his disappearance. Anything leading to his relation to Maki. If I'm right, then Maki is going to be a very powerful political figure for us, Naruto said with a smile while the others looked left and right. Something then dawned on Naruto and he nodded to himself. Kin-san, will you please give Suiran-san her dinner? If she doesn't eat it, then tell her that my snakes will bite if she doesn't, Naruto said with a maniac grin. Kin nodded and excused herself. She quickly entered the kitchen to heat up some food that Naruto prepared. So while this is going on, why don't you tell us? Exactly what is the purpose to this spy network? Zabuza asked and Naruto nodded. Let's wait until Kin returns, Naruto said, and people could agree with that for right now. In less than a few minutes, Kin returned and took her place among enough. She had informed xAyane of Naruto's words and she just stared at the tray on her lap. I undid the bandages and told her not to try anything weird, which she didn't, and so I just left her alone. Are you sure it was fine? Kin asked and Naruto nodded. There are seals around the wall keeping her in place. They don't work for anyone that isn't wearing our communication seals. She won't be going anywhere, Naruto said confidently, and everyone settled with that while Zabuza got back to the main point. Seeing his seriousness, Naruto stood to his feet and waved hand signs. Instantly the world grew dark for everyone. They were no longer in the house. No, they were outside. There were vast trees covering the landscape. Multiple buildings everywhere. They all gasped at the large sun before Naruto's voice echoed over them. What is it that all nations strive for? He asked and everyone grew silent. Fu and Maki turned to each other while Kin and Tayuya scratched their heads in confusion. Gaara remained emotionless while Temari and Kankuro seemed confused. Haku glanced to Zabuza, who narrowed his eyes, and Pakura folded her arms. What do all nations strive for? Peace, Pakura answered. Everyone widened their eyes in realization. Yep, that's what every nation wanted. To have no more wars or killing. For its people to live without fear of having their loved ones taken from them. Even Kiri with its war wanted peace. Exactly. That is what this network is for. To bring people together. Just look. Konoha, Suna, Kiri, and Odo came together. Right here, with us. We all get along just well. We will show them what we're capable of. We'll show the nations that peace is possible. We aren't just a spy network, we're our own unique group. Zabuza, you don't want to see tyranny like the Yondaime Mizukage, do you? Naruto asked and Zabuza shook his head. Pakura, you don't want to be betrayed again, do you? Naruto asked and Pakura shook her head. Yes, we all want something. We each care for our nations. That is why I want you all to help me. See this? Naruto asked as the dream shifted. It changed to a random village, children playing in the streets, adults talking, people from all the nations coming together and not fighting. It's a near impossible dream, but it's only impossible if we make it impossible. I'm going to try for it. For something that could make everyone happy. Would you all help me? Help me find the way to a peace that my sensei wants. A peace to last this time. No more treaties or alliances. Actual peace for everyone, Naruto said, and everyone glanced to each other. All help. Kin shouted, raising her hand into the air. She never wanted anyone to go through what Orochimaru had done to people. Never in her life would she want someone sacrificed. You convinced me. Fu shouted happily. Got nothing better to do. Whatever, shithead, but it's on your head that we get this done, Tayuya answered. We will follow your lead, Naruto Uzumaki, Gaara said. Him and his siblings came forward. Temari nodded fast and Kankuro gave him a thumbs up. I don't want anyone to be persecuted for having a bloodline. I shall help in your endeavor, Naruto-san, Haku said, coming forward. Naruto turned to Pakura and Zabuza. This is a pipe dream at best, brat. However, give me the chance to knock the Yagura down a peg, then you've got me, Zabuza said, and Pakura agreed. We've all come this far. It would be insane to go back now, Pakura answered, and the genjutsu faded. They all appeared in the room and Naruto nodded with a bow. Thank you, Dadbayo, Naruto said gratefully while everyone shook their heads. Naruto leaned up and gave a wide grin across his face. I'll be reassigning the teams tomorrow. Don't worry about xAyane. I'll do something about her. You all get your rest, Naruto said, and people began to disperse while Naruto laid on the couch. It only took him a second to realize that Ayane was still with him. Nice speech, she said, leaning her head against his shoulder. Naruto smiled and wrapped one arm around her. Someone has to do it. Would you help me too? Naruto asked. Ayane snorted and looked up at the ceiling. She then gave a small yawn. As long as people are human, then there will never be peace, but I will believe in your vision, Naruto. You can always know that I will believe in you, Ayane responded while Naruto took a glance to her. He saw her red eyes piercing the darkness of the room before he quickly stole a kiss from her lips. Well, that's all I could ever ask from you, Naruto answered back before he picked her up and the two walked off. Next morning. Exactly how did it end up like this? Maki asked as the rest of the network was sitting on a ledge looking at Ayane across from Samui. Right next to the network members was Sasuke and Shikamaru, who were glaring at everyone else. The demon of the hidden mist, Naruto. You're so troublesome. I had suspected something like this, but for it to have been an assignment from Jiraiya-sama himself. What a drag, Shikamaru said with a slump of his shoulders before getting elbowed by Temari. He just grunted while Sasuke turned to Gaara. HMPH, I never really did get to fight you, did I? Sasuke asked with a glare while Gaara glared right back. The rest of the members sighed before Fu spoke up. So is there something going on between Ayane-san and Samui-san? They seem to be at odds with each other, Fu said, and true enough, Naruto stood between Samui and Ayane on top of a small island of land in the middle of the water. I had thought we were doing this when we got back home. What's the deal here? Ayane asked while Samui dropped her arms to her sides. Ayane did the same while Naruto sweat dropped. Kyuubi, was Nibi ever like this? Naruto asked. Kyuubi and Nibi stirred hearing Naruto's voice and the demon fox snorted. Oh yeah, she was just like this. Stubborn and always trying to prove herself. I will never forget the day a woman tried to hit on me. Nibi turned her into a vegetable. Literally. Her head was stuck in the ground like a watermelon, Kyuubi said, getting an eyebrow twitch from the blonde Jinchuriki. HMPH, hussy. She knew better than to try and take my Kurama. I'm the only one who gets to this stud into a coma. That is my well-earned right, damn it, Nibi responded, coming into the conversation. Naruto sighed and shook his head fervently. What is wrong with womankind? Naruto wondered before he raised his hand. Begin. Naruto said, unsure if this was right before he quickly backed away. Samui continued to stare at Ayane before she addressed the female Tengu's question. The mission was successful. I said once we were finished with our mission we would fight. We're finished, so it would be cool to get this done now. Do you have any problems? Samui asked and Ayane shook her head. Good. I would have ignored them even if there were, Samui said coldly. Well, thank you for the sentiment, Ayane replied just as coldly. The two continued to stare a little longer while Konkuro muttered something about blondes and being a woman's desire, making Naruto snort at the comment, but he didn't say anything. In fact, speaking of blondes, Naruto quickly made a clone to talk with Suiran for the time being. However, Naruto instantly regretted taking his eyes off the fight for that second. Samui flung a kunai at Ayane quickly, much to purple-haired Tengu's anticipation. She quickly jumped into the air before she noticed Samui fling a shuriken at her. Ayane rolled her body and dodged the weapon before she grabbed it through the hole in the center and sent it back at Samui. The blonde jumped back away from it and easily landed on the water. Ayane cursed and quickly backed away from the water. Unlike Samui, she couldn't water walk. She could very well run across water with her speed, but she didn't have the ability to just stay above it while being still. Ayane didn't have the time to think about that little predicament as Samui rushed her. The Tengu quickly backflipped away while Samui left the waters and entered the land. As she saw Ayane backflip away, she noticed the small smirk on her face before she noticed Ayane vanish in a swirl of sakura leaves, which was weird because there were no sakura trees around the area. Samui glared and she noticed explosion tags around her. She covered her body and they exploded while Ayane stopped just short of a tree. You might have an advantage, but I've worked hard to get here, Ayane said to the large fire that had appeared where Samui was standing. I never said that you didn't. Samui's voice came from behind Ayane, who turned her head to see Samui's Tonto ready to strike her down. Ayane countered with her Kodachi as the two weapons clashed against each other. Cold light blue eyes met cold red eyes as the two continued to fight with the sparks flying off against their steel. Wow, they're so good. So does that mean that Naruto-san is better than them? Haku asked and people just glanced towards a smiling Naruto. They could see that he was just going to let them think over that question instead of directly answering it. Not going to say anything. Tayuya asked and Naruto shook his head. Ayane jumped in the air and swung her leg at Samui's face. To her surprise, the hit was successful as Samui grunted from the pain. However, Ayane couldn't leave this sense of foreboding from her body before she saw the reason why. Samui had used the momentum of Ayane's kick to allow her the ability to spin, which was what she wanted. The blonde Chunin placed her hands on the ground and swung her legs towards Ayane's chest, getting a solid hit as she launched her into the air. Samui straightened herself and threw her tanto at Ayane. Everyone watched on as the sword continued on its way towards the purple-haired Konoha Chunin. Ayane coughed before she forced herself back to see her reflection in the tanto as it passed her. She quickly grabbed the handle of it and threw it back at Samui. The blonde snorted and grabbed the tanto before she saw the trap. She glared back at Ayane, who just finished her hand gestures. Haijutsu. Reku Jinpu Satsu, secret technique. Torn Sky Blast, Ayane shouted as she launched a wave of lightning downward to Samui's direction. Samui glared at the incoming attack before she held out her tanto. Ayane and everyone else waited with bated breath as the lightning slammed into Samui's tanto. She grunted from the immediately pressure before Ayane saw her tanto course in Raiden Chakra. Samui swiftly drew her tanto back behind her and the lightning from Ayane's attack was diverted into the woods where it exploded behind Samui. She deflected it. Not even the masters of Mugen Tenshin can do that, Ayane thought to herself while Fu, Maki, Haku and even Sasuke were looking for some to explain what the hell they just saw. She did it perfectly. When Ayane-san launched her jutsu, Samui-san took notice that it looked mostly lightning-oriented. Thus if she was able to hold out her tanto, course Raiden through, and allow her technique to hit, then Samui could use her own Raiden chakra to divert the path of the Torn Sky Blast. Amazing. She actually directed a straight-lining shot, Pakura said while Fu and the others looked on in awe. Yeah, but not without its consequences, Naruto interrupted their admiration while Temari, Gaara and Shikamaru nodded. Pakura raised an eyebrow before she turned back and everyone could see what Naruto had meant. Samui dropped her tanto to the ground while her hand twitched. Definitely not going to do that again. That wasn't pure lightning like she had thought. It used something other than chakra, so while Samui could divert it, she still got a jolt sent into her arm. Ayane dropped to the ground and took the chance to charge at Samui. Seeing her coming, Samui cursed and quickly jumped back into the water, getting Ayane to growl. Sei quickly moved back a few feet before she ran again. This time everyone watched as Ayane sped across the water so fast that they almost couldn't see the movement of her legs. She let out a punch that Samui was able to avoid by darting to the side. Raiden. Sander as a lightning release. Thunder laser, Samui shouted at the top of her voice as she sent a wave of lightning from her good hand at Ayane. Ayane quickly turned around and held out her own hands. Haijutsu. Reku Jinpu Satsu. Ayane hollered and the two waves of chakra and ki raced towards each other before a massive light came over the field, getting everyone to cover their eyes. Whoa, that's amazing, Sasuke commented. Troublesome, Shikamaru also commented. The light faded and everyone noticed Samui was alone in the field. Her eyes darted left and right before she cursed. She looked down and she noticed the slight burn marks from Ayane's attack on her hand. She placed her hand on the water and allowed it to soothe her slightly. I learned that each element has a weakness. If you're lightning, then I will try this, Ayane said, getting Samui to turn. She noticed Ayane's arms vibrate rapidly while Temari and Naruto paid attention. Ninpo. Hama Repujin no Jutsu, ninja art. Art of violent wind blades, Ayane hollered, allowing Naruto, Temari and Fu to watch as she swung her hands, sending 5 medium-sized wind blazes towards Samui's form. The blonde Chunin widened her eyes at the incoming blades of pure wind before she did another sign. Sweden. Kurigakur no Jutsu, Samui said, getting Haku and Zabuza to widen their eyes as the mist settled in. Ayane watched her wind blades pierce the mist before they exploded, showing that they hit something, but Ayane knew that it wasn't Samui. So I can't see you, huh? Ayane wondered as she moved cautiously through the mist. How does this girl know one of Kiri's techniques? Zabuza asked Naruto suspiciously while the blonde male rubbed the back of his head. Do you know of Kyoko Fura? Naruto asked while Zabuza widened his eyes. He quickly jumped to his feet and grabbed Naruto by the shirt, getting a rise from everyone. Where is she? Where is Kyoko? Tell me, brat. I have no time for games. Zabuza said while Naruto glared at him. First, you will let go of me, Naruto said dangerously, which made Zabuza comply. Second, she and Konoha. I was able to convince her to join us. She's the best and she taught Samui and myself, Naruto said while Zabuza just slumped to the ground. Everyone immediately heard clashing as they saw Ayane try to block against the unseeable strikes to her person. She rolled across the ground dodging kunai and shuriken that stabbed into the ground. Ayane huffed and wiped the sweat from her face. She quickly placed her hand in her pouch before she heard a bone-chilling voice. Whatever you have won't help you, Samui said behind her. Ayane grinned and launched a sweep kick to the blonde's body before Samui backflipped away and landed safely. Ayane sucked her teeth as she engaged Samui again in a straight taijutsu fight. Kick for kick, punch for punch, and sword for sword. The two flew into a frenzy against the other with their individual pride on the line. Samui dealt a roundhouse kick to Ayane's side that received a block from the Tengu female as she was sent back into the air. Ayane held up a familiar hand sign and Samui narrowed her eyes. That's not going to work. I have seen through it, Samui said before she noticed Ayane's smirk. She wondered what it was about before she looked at the ground. She noticed 5 kunai around her. Samui tried to jump, but she noticed her legs were tied. She stared back up at Ayane. Thank you, Samui. You're the first I get to try this new technique against. Be grateful, Ayane said as she finished her hand gestures. Haijutsu no Mugen Tenshin. Taju Jinpu Satsusena, hidden technique of Mugen Tenshin. Multiple circling torn blast spheres, Ayane shouted and everyone watched as lightning sphere came from her body. About 5 wrapped around her body instantly before she shot one at Samui. The Konoha Chunin rolled to the side before she saw a burst of lightning against the ground leaving a little crater. Try not to get hit now, Ayane shouted as she flung the other 4. Samui cursed and quickly ran through the field to avoid the strikes to her person. The explosions behind her rang in her ears as she rushed to get away. One appeared next to her body and she quickly held a defensive stance while it exploded. Ayane fell to the ground and her legs twitched as she huffed violently. That was cool, Ayane raised her head and growled when she saw Samui's form. Some of her clothes were destroyed and other parts showed her injuries. However, you're about to learn why I'm called the Young Lightning of Kumo. Rantan. Reza Sanran, Storm Release. Laser Scatter Field, Samui shouted as she launched a wave of beams towards Ayane's figure. Ayane, taken off guard by the action, could only block as the attacks hit her full circle. They exploded against her person sending Ayane crashing through the trees. What? Since when does she know that? I thought only Darui-san was able to use Rantan, Naruto said and everyone could understand. I think I remember that Rantan wasn't restricted to just one person. Apparently in Kumo, it's known by quite a few people, but not by many. It's amazing, Pakura said while Naruto blinked. Samui stopped her assault and fell to the ground. She huffed slightly and she noticed her hands trembling. She looked up and she noticed Ayane huffing as she looked up at the sky. I've been training nearly my whole life. To think that it would be used here as something else. Do I pass? Ayane asked and Samui smiled. With flying colors. You're very cool and deserving of Naruto, Samui said before she felt Ayane's ki spark. Ayane got up and she held out her hand. She struggled and grunted before everyone noticed lightning pour into her hand. When I had seen that Uchiha do it I was surprised. It looked just like this Mugen Tenshin technique. I must say, we're not so different are we? Ayane shouted while Samui stood to her feet. No, I would guess not. It wouldn't be cool to think different, Samui said holding out her hand. Naruto smiled and everyone watched as a blue sphere came into her hands. It kept its circular rotation before the two kunoichi dashed at each other. Their legs heavy, but still fast. Both nearly each other and held their hands out. No one but Naruto could see the amusement in their eyes though their faces refused to show it as they collided. Haijutsu. Kanrakurai no Jutsu, hidden technique. Art of violent lightning, Ayane yelled at the top of her voice. Rasengan, Samui shouted right next to her as the two slammed their techniques into each other. Everyone was, once again, forced to cover their eyes as the cackling and swirling came around them. This power. This is nothing like a Chidori, what was that jutsu? I couldn't even copy it, Sasuke wondered as everyone grunted against the violent rush of wind. Those two shits are going to tear this place apart. Tayuya shouted. Zabuza and Pakura tried to keep their vision, but it was hard to do. Haku squinted her eyes along with Konkuro, Fu, Maki, and Temari. Shikamaru muttered troublesome while only Naruto, and strangely Gaara, we able to see it clearly. The light faded and everyone turned back to the field to see Ayane and Samui standing in front of each other. You really are strong. That was fun, Samui admitted and Ayane nodded. You're not as weak as I thought, Ayane said, and the two felt their exhaustion as they were ready to drop to the ground. Both closed their eyes, but before they could fall Ayane fell to Naruto's back while the blonde male caught Samui in his arms. The smile on his face was evident. He was very proud of his ladies. Need some help? Gaara asked and Naruto shook his head. Nah, they worked hard for this. I'll be the one to take them both to the rooms. We'll discuss things later. Dismissed, Naruto said as he managed to lift Samui into his arms while still keeping Ayane to his back. Love you Samui-chan, Ayane-chan, Naruto said as he kissed both their cheeks and quickly took them to the house. It wasn't a far walk. He then took them upstairs and laid them against the bed. He then left them alone as he closed the door. With Naruto. Naruto smiled at the exciting fight he had just seen, but he had business to take care of at the moment. He would have to put Ayane and Samui on hold for a little bit. Naruto opened the door to the basement where he noticed his clone tapping his foot impatiently. He saw his creator who nodded. The clone breathed a sigh of relief and dispelled, giving Naruto all the information that he needed. Really? Even after all you told me you still think that Yagura is in the right? Naruto asked as Suiren glanced up. She saw that the clone was gone and shook his head. It's not what is right. It's about loyalty. Loyalty to one's country and to one's cage. I'm not going to betray Yagura-sama just because of his actions, Suiren said while Naruto frowned. He would have wanted to tell her that he was being controlled via genjutsu, but all he had was Tayuya to go on as he hadn't been there. Honestly, loyalty to one's country sometimes means going against its leader. You seem nice enough to know what I mean. Do you really think that killing people who have bloodlines is right? Yeah, I know about it. It's actually impossible not to know about it. I also heard it from Haku yesterday evening. Do you really see them as demons? Please, and here I thought Kiri valued power. Any other nation would kill to have bloodlines, literally. No, seriously, they actually would. You're just becoming a part of the problem and not the solution. Besides, how can you call them demons if your Mizukage is a Jinchuriki? Naruto asked and Suiren widened her eyes. You, how did you know about that? She asked and Naruto grinned. What can I say? Biju like to talk, Naruto said and Suiren widened her eyes. She stared at Naruto questioningly and the blonde nodded, answering her unasked question. He was indeed a Jinchuriki. Suiren tried to cover her surprise before those words registered to her. She knew it was wrong to do it, but it was the Mizukage's law. How could she oppose it? I don't know what you've been told, but fighting your country's leader to make it better isn't making you a traitor. It makes you truly loyal. You love your country, your people, and your land. To not see it like it is now. Isn't that right? Naruto asked and Suiren calmed down. She saw Naruto withdraw his snakes and they slipped into his jacket. He then undid Suiren's ropes, letting them fall. If it was me, then I would fight anyone in Konoha for Konoha. It means that much to me to see it handled the way that. Nothing is more important to me and my family than Konoha. Make your choice, Naruto said as he tossed Suiren her headband. She grabbed it into her delicate fingers and fiddled with it. The doors open, Naruto said, and he wasn't sure if Suiren had heard him before he left quickly. He would give her the time to think. Base. Nighttime. Sasuke and Shikamaru watched as Naruto and the others were around the table. A map was in front of them all and Naruto held an ink pen in his hands. All right then. It's confirmed then. Gaara, Temari, and Konkuro will stay in where Temari will look through the archives. That's one team. The next will be Tayuya and Kin-chan going back to Kiri. Although I don't know how that will work without. It wouldn't work. Not without me. Everyone turned and only Zabuza along with Haku seemed surprised at Suiren, who had all her regular stuff. They noticed the slash mark across the headband she was wearing. Everyone seemed surprised as Suiren casually sat down next to Zabuza and pointed. If I do take to Yuya-san and Kin-san back to Kiri, then Yagura has told me that Kin-san will die for fear of treachery. I could vouch for to Yuya-san, but only because of my standing as a Junin. Anything else will have to be thought up. Suiren spoke while others just looked at her. What? She asked coyly. No, don't. What? Me? Why are you even? Zabuza trailed off while Suiren sighed. Loyalty to one's country sometimes means going against that country's leader. Isn't that right, Naruto-san? Suiren asked and everyone gawked and Naruto who nodded. That's right, Suiren-san. So that's a problem. Then. Wait, yeah, that works. Suiren, Tayuya and Kin will be the next time. Kin-chan will return to Kiri with you and Tayuya. Don't worry, I'll iron out the details with you. Now then, the next people will be Zabuza, Haku and Fu-chan. Fu, you told me that you need training with water, right? Naruto asked and Fu nodded her head. Good, then that works out. Fu will assist in Kiri's rebellion as a person that Zabuza and Haku saved while both teach her Sweden. Pakura and Maki are already a student-teacher combo, so they will be fine alone. I know you guys are friends, so I won't be leaving you separate for long. How long has this civil war been going on? Naruto asked and Zabuza folded his arms. Maybe 3 years, give or take 2 more, Zabuza answered and Naruto nodded again. Good, then this still works out. Zabuza, when you go back to your base, then get to your leader and have them contact Konoha one more time. I promise you we'll be involved this time. Not like we'll have a choice in the matter, Naruto said and Zabuza nodded, though it was a confused nod. Pakura, Maki, I know this might sound strange, but I want you to go back to Orochimaru. Yeah, he's had I know, but I need someone on the inside to keep tabs on him. However, the moment he tells you to do anything questionable, which he will, then contact me. I will think of something. Is everyone in agreement? Naruto asked and everyone nodded. They all quickly dispersed and Naruto got up. He was about to walk away before Suiren grabbed his arm. Can you promise me that this is the right way? She asked and Naruto glared lightly at the ground. Honestly, no, I can't. However, no matter which side wins, then you will feel in your heart if you made the right choice or not. That's all I can say. Better get some rest. You'll be leaving tomorrow, Naruto said and Suiren nodded as she walked off towards her own room. So, what do you guys think? Naruto asked to Sasuke and Shikamaru. You're really digging your grave here, loser, but if it wasn't you then I would be very surprised. Still, I guess that is okay then. But how are you going to get that old man to agree? Sasuke asked while Naruto grinned. Oh, no. I'll think of something, Naruto said in a sing-song voice before he vanished. Sasuke and Shikamaru glanced to each other while the Nara just grunted. Man, he's really going to drag us into this hell this time. I swear, he's so. Would you stop with that damn word already? I'm going to bed, Sasuke replied heatedly while he left with his hands in his pockets. What's his problem? I was going to say that Naruto's so weird like that. Weirdo. Shikamaru shrugged to himself and followed Sasuke up the stairs. TCH, where does all that power come from? How were they able to use such techniques? Am I really getting stronger staying here? Damn it, maybe Orochimaru was right. Power beyond my dreams. Power to kill Itachi. For my mother, as well as my clan, Sasuke thought to himself as he and Shikamaru went into their rooms. Back in Konohagakure, Sarutobi sighed as he swiftly handed the scroll to Kurenai. The Genjutsu mistress along with Anko, Kyoko, Tsunade, Jiraiya and Ibiki were opened it and they peered its contents. Anko's eyes bulged while Ibiki remained speechless. Kyoko just grinned outright while Kurenai seemed furious. Tsunade gripped the outer reaches of the scroll while Jiraiya seemed even more ashamed that he could before. And I was never told about this until now because of what? Kurenai shouted while Sarutobi flinched from her cold stare. Kurenai rolled up the scroll and held it in front of the Sandaime. What is this anyway? Naruto is my son. I have the right to know about all things concerning him since I'm his mother, Kurenai said angrily. How could I not have seen the signs? It was so obvious. I should have known that Minato wasn't normal. It all makes sense now. I always thought that Minato might be hiding something from me, but I could never trace it, Jiraiya said while Anko calmed Kurenai down. I understand your anger, Kurenai-san, but you have to understand that Naruto-kun was young at the time and I couldn't risk it for his safety. His father's name was already a big deal here and in Iowa. If anyone else had discovered this, then it would only worsen for Konoha as a village. I tried to keep it with the best interesting at heart, but with Minato's death, then this is the only thing that can be done, Sarutobi said while Kurenai dropped to the ground. No way. He can't leave me. He's my son before he's some daimyo's successor. How could he possibly rule the Hino Kuni capital? Kurenai asked while Sarutobi stood up. You won't have to leave him. You, Anko-san and even Kyoko-san could go with him if you desired. I'm sure that even Ibiki could, seeing as how you were his family. This is also why I have won Tsunade, Sarutobi said with a grin while Tsunade's opened her mouth, but then closed it. She would have shouted that the bet wasn't fair, but it was what it was. She sighed and just nodded. Fine old man. I'll do it, but I sure as hell am not going to like it. I might have hated this job, but I gave my word and I will keep it just as well. When am I inaugurated? Tsunade asked while Sarutobi smiled. As soon as Platoon 13 returns. Also before I leave I will be passing this law. No one in this room is to tell Naruto of this note, Sarutobi said, and if Kurenai was mad before then, now she was outraged. What? How can you tell us that? We're denying Naruto-kun more of his life. I can't keep such information from him no matter how. Kurenai stopped as ki from Sarutobi raised in the room. It is the Sandame's law and you will obey it. For Naruto-kun we will put this off as much as possible. He will have matured in 2 years' time. I'm sure he can handle all responsibilities then, Sarutobi said while everyone just stared at him blankly. Kurenai sighed and furled up the scroll. This is no better than hiding the Kyuubi from him. I hope he doesn't feel like he did when we talked. Seeing him sad tore my heart apart, Kurenai said while everyone else consoled her. Platoon 13. Next morning. Naruto, Sasuke, Shikamaru, along with 2 heavily bandaged kunoichi were all in front of the house as they waved goodbye to the parting members of Naruto's network. They had all left that morning and now it was time for their own group to head back to Konoha. So tell me, Samui-chan, where did you learn Ranten from? Naruto asked, and Samui shrugged her shoulders, which got a jolt of pain from her body while she lowly, very lowly, whimpered. I had come up with it on my own. After Kyoko started teaching me Suiten Jutsu, then I came up with the Ranten on my own time. It's just an advanced natured jutsu. Anyone with the time and patience as well as affinities can learn it just like I did. I didn't use it in the Chunin exams merely because there didn't seem to be a need to showcase it. Or I should say, that I didn't have it perfected until now, Samui said while the others just looked at her. Hey, speaking of that, how am I supposed to tell my affinities? Ayane asked while Shikamaru and Sasuke glanced to her. What are you talking about? You just used Raiden and Futon to use in that fight, didn't you? Those wind blades and that lightning strike, Shikamaru said while Ayane waved it off. Of course not. Those are just the product of a shinobi's ki and the intense training to utilize it. Nothing more. So, how do I tell my affinities? Ayane asked, ignoring the scrutinizing look on Shikamaru's face while Sasuke seemed to be in deep thought. You tell with this. It's called chakra paper. Just channel a bit of your chakra or ki into it and you'll find out. Split in half. Wind. Burns to ash. Fire. Crinkles. Then lightning. Crumbles. Then earth. Moist. Then water. Try it out, Naruto said while Ayane just looked at the paper. She took it from Naruto and held it in her hands. Closing her eyes, she channeled her ki through it while everyone watched. Ayane opened her eyes and she saw the paper split down the middle while the left side crinkled and the right crumbled. Wind, lightning and earth. That's the most unusual of them all. I can get lightning because of your 2 techniques that you used in that fight, but why earth? Naruto asked and Ayane shrugged. Maybe I'm just better than all of you, she said with a smirk. Shikamaru rolled his eyes while Sasuke snorted. Oh, you're not better than me. We settled that in the land of iron, Naruto said and Ayane growled, remembering that incident. You aren't better than me as we had a tie. Nothing more. You couldn't even walk on water. That's a shame, Samui spoke while Ayane grew a tick mark. HMPH, you too then, Ayane replied, getting a snicker from Naruto and a small smile from Samui as Platoon 13 walked off. Alternate world. With Kasumi, 2 weeks later. But father, aren't you upset? We should go after Raida. Hayate isn't waking up and I'm worried about him, Kasumi said as she and Shiden continued to walk through the halls of the Mugen Tenshin's head household. Kasumi, you are to only be focused on your training at the moment. Stop acting like a child. Ayame is staying near Hayate at all times. Your training is done for the day, now leave, Shiden said, and Kasumi wanted to say more on the matter, but she just stopped and nodded. Kasumi quickly left Shiden alone while the master of Mugen Tenshin sighed and rubbed the back of his head. I'm getting too old for that girl, Shiden thought to himself. Come to think of it, he also wondered how Ayane has been faring over with Naruto and the others. The thought of her having a good time had passed his mind on more than one occasion. He wasn't sure why, but he had been thinking about her a lot since her departure. Kasumi had exited the house and quickly shot off through the woods. She had to know. She couldn't rest until she did something. She just wanted to know. Kasumi wasn't exactly sure what she would ever do, but it was better to find out than to just sit by and do nothing. She would feel so useless and helpless that she couldn't even help her brother. Hayate's condition hadn't gotten any better since this whole thing started, and it was making her even more anxious. Kasumi dropped down to the ground and huffed slightly before she came up to a large house. She quickly ran up the stairs and pushed open the door. Genra, are you in here? Kasumi asked as she noticed candles lit. She could see Genra in the furthest back of the room kneeling with his eyes closed. Kasumi stepped through the door and walked through across the floor mat. She stood right in Genra's face with only the candles staying between the both of them. Kasumi knelt before Genra and calmed herself. You know something, don't you? About what happened to Hayate? Please tell me. Oto-sama won't say anything, but I think I have the right to know, Kasumi said, and she was only met with silence. It stayed like this for a few minutes and Kasumi was getting all the more anxious before Genra's voice spoke. If Shiden won't tell you, then why should I? I know of what happened to Hayate. This probably is too big a path for you, Genra said, and Kasumi couldn't really tell as he still had that weird mask on like always, but she still had her own duties. Duties that she would fulfill on her own devices. I will make that decision after I know. I want that knowledge to become available to me, Kasumi said with a bow while Genra gave a sinister grin behind his mask. Very well then. It has been confirmed that Hayate was indeed attacked by Raida, but his whereabouts have traced him to a world fighting championship known as Dead or Alive DOA. I don't know the truth to these rumors, but it's the only thing to go on. What will you do with this knowledge? Genra asked while Kasumi glared at the ground, her eyes being reflected by the fire. Genra could very well feel this, but he chose not to comment on this. I do not know, but if there is more to this rumor, then I will have to look into it, Kasumi said, keeping her voice a little low. What was that? Genra asked, feigning his hearing. Realizing that she was almost caught, Kasumi shook her head and stood to her feet. No, nothing. Thank you, Genra-san. I will be going now, Kasumi said, and before Genra could say any more, he felt her presence leave the room. No, thank you, Kasumi-san, for coming to me with your help. Looks like things will be set in motion a lot sooner than I expected. Although I would say I am a tad peeved that Shiden sent Ayane away without my knowing. Oh well, I can do this just as well, Genra said with a grin across his face. With Alma and Rachel, the two blonde sisters were currently sitting at a bar with nothing to do. Rachel had told Ryu as much as she could about the Dead or Alive tournament committee, but it wasn't much to go on as they seemed to stay out of the business that didn't involve fighting. Ryu had indeed thanked Rachel for the information. He had also given Alma the day off from her training, which was coming along splendidly. Alma wasn't as good as Ryu by any standards, but by human standards then she would be a great wonder to the world. Alma's speed had greatly increased as had the effective use of her punches, kicks, and her fighting style. Alma's style seemed to center around something close to her fiend self. She was good at ranged attacks as well as close combat. The energy that made her a Hanyu from Naruto had increased her vision, thus improving her reaction time. Hit me again, buddy, Rachel said with a grin while the bartender just sighed and nodded at the cute blondes in front of him. Days like this, then it was worth it as long as you got to look at the hotties get drunk then saunter off somewhere. Rachel, try not to pass out. Sometimes I wonder if you're as responsible as you look at times, Alma said while Rachel scoffed. I'm just as responsible as you, Alma. I just felt like having a drink with my sister. Is that so wrong? Rachel asked while Alma rolled her eyes. Yeah, right. You'll find any excuse to drink, Alma muttered to herself, getting a glare from Rachel. Sigh, I wonder what Naruto-sama is up to. He's been silent for a while since his last message, Alma said, swirling her finger around her glass. She looked at the seal on her hands and thought about telling Naruto about the DOA tournament, but it wasn't really a major issue of Naruto's concern. Maybe if it escalated then she would tell. Speaking at which, Alma had been wondering to herself why she hadn't informed Naruto of the Mugen Tenshin incident. Oh, that's right, because Ryu told her that sometimes people must handle their problems on their own, which Alma thought was bullshit, but she didn't say anything about it. Well, why don't you call him? Sheesh. You act like you're his long-lost wife or something. Which you aren't, because if you were, I'd kill him, then you, Rachel said while Alma glared at her sister. And if you tried to kill him then I would kill you. I mean, I basically could have killed you when I was a fiend. I was just that strong, Alma said while Rachel coughed. Oh, as those fighting words, Alma. I'd love to show you how it's done, Rachel said with a grin while Alma rolled her eyes. She just decided not to respond anymore. It would be a pain to do so. Oh hey, what do I see here? I spy with my little eye two ladies all alone and on the fly. Rachel and Alma turned their heads and sweat dropped while they frowned at the person to ruin their mood. The person was obviously male. An African American male with green hair that only showed enough to cover a few spots on his otherwise bald head. He wore something of regular clothes that people normally walked around in. He also wore dark sunglasses that hid his eyes. What he needed them for in a barely lit bar was something that neither Rachel nor Alma could figure out. The young man sat himself down and grinned at Alma, who tried to ignore him. She took a sip of her drink before she partially opened one eye to see him still smiling at her. What do you want? Rachel asked the man, looking at her sister. Alma thanked her sister for that outburst, as she would have done it also if it wasn't for her. Oh, sorry, pretty lady. The name is Zach, and let's just say that I think it's a crime for two ladies to be by themselves, MMPH, the now known Zaku said while Alma and Rachel groaned. So tell me, baby, what's it take for a guy like me to get close to a girl like you? Zach asked as he placed his hand on Alma's shoulder. Walking back to Konoha, Naruto felt so pissed off that he was ready to Rasengan just about anything. And he meant anything. Why was he so damn irritated? Something was happening and the blonde didn't like it. Not at all. Damn it. Calm down. What is wrong with me? Naruto shouted to himself. How about you not touch me and you get to keep your teeth attached to your mouth? Alma negotiated and Zaku just chuckled as he made no move to stop. Hey buddy, leave the ladies alone. Some random bar guy said to Zach. Wapo. Zach shouted as Rachel and Alma saw a swift midsection punch from Zach's fist to the man's stomach, sending him crashing across the ground and into a pool table. Alma seemed slack-jawed while Rachel tried to keep a firm composure, but both had a single thought. Damn. What the just happened? Man, ya fool. These threads cost more than your life. Don't go messing them up. Sorry about that, ladies, Zach said, not missing a beat while Rachel and Alma sighed. Rachel chose to ignore and looked at the TV up on the wall. She narrowed her eyes as she saw a brunette man in a suit on the television. The volume was a little low, and Rachel wanted it louder. Hey, turn that up for me please, Rachel pleaded, and the bar owner just nodded and pulled up the remote, putting up the volume. Yes, you heard right. DOATEC will be hosting a worldwide, no-holds-barred, fighting tournament. All competitors of all styles are welcome to participate. Be they male or female. The winner will be known as one of the greatest fighters in the world, as well as received both money and fame for their recognition. In 1 month's time, Dead or Alive will be submitting applications for people to sign up. I am the head of the Dead or Alive Tournament Executive Committee, Fame Douglas, and I greet all who will come to see who is #1 in the world, the man known as Fame Douglas said while some people in the bar remained silent. Oh yeah baby, did you hear that? Fame and money. That's what makes the world go round, you know that. I'm so gonna enter into that and I'm gonna kick so much butt. Gonna cheer for me? Zach asked while Alma snorted. No, not really. You see, I can't cheer for you if I pound you into the ground, Alma said while Zack chuckled. And what do you know of fighting, baby? He asked. Alma's response was to raise her fists into the air and quickly bring it down, shattering the table into pieces while Rachel just sighed. And she says that I'm not responsible. I'm so not paying for that, Rachel thought while Zack widened his eyes. Oh, I'll be fine. Don't worry, I'll console you when you're in last place, Alma said as she and Rachel left the bar. Zack smirked and waved his hands in the air. Bring it out, little lady. Yeah, Zack said excitedly. Hospital. Leaving a random hospital was an elderly man. He had white hair on some of his bald head and gray hair covering his chin as a beard. He was currently wearing a green Chinese tunic as he left the hospital. He was a little depressed simply because his daughter was sick and he had no way of fully paying the operation that she needed. He walked through the streets and sighed. Mei Lin, if only I could help you to recover. You're my precious granddaughter after all, he said before he stopped a TV in the window of a closed store that was still on for some reason. Yes, you heard right. DOATEC will be hosting a worldwide, no-holds-barred, fighting tournament. All competitors of all styles are welcome to participate. Be they male or female. The winner will be known as one of the greatest fighters in the world as well as received both money and fame for their recognition. In 1 month's time, Dead or Alive will be submitting applications for people to sign up. I am the head of the Dead or Alive Tournament Executive Committee, Fame Douglas, and I greet all who will come to see who is number one in the world, Fame Douglas spoke and the man widened his eyes. Dead or alive, huh? Very well then. I shall win and I shall obtain that money for my granddaughter, so says I. Gen Fu, master of Xingyi Liu Heiquan, the man known as General Fu said with an elderly grin across his face. He wasn't out of the race just yet because of his age. Somewhere else. Yeah, woohoo, I'm the best. You can't be me, hun. I'm Tina Armstrong, the daughter of the best wrestler in the world. Tina shouted. She was a blonde woman with a very thin figure and a southern accent, or so people would assume, as she climbed out of the ring. Tina was handed a towel and wiped herself off. Ah, that was too good. Now to take a good long shower. EY, someone be a darlin' and turn on the TV for me, Tina shouted as she stepped into the shower. Someone did just that for her and the current channel had already caught her attention. Yes, you heard right. DOATEC will be hosting a worldwide, no-holds-barred, fighting tournament. All competitors of all styles are welcome to participate. Be they male or female. The winner will be known as one of the greatest fighters in the world as well as received both money and fame for their recognition. In 1 month's time, Dead or Alive will be submitting applications for people to sign up. I am the head of the Dead or Alive Tournament Executive Committee, Fame Douglas, and I greet all who will come to see who is number one in the world, Fame Douglas spoke. Dead or alive, huh? Hey daddy, looks like we're going to be having some hella fun. I might even get discovered and move to Hollywood, Tina shouted to her father, Bass Armstrong, who was sitting in a chair. Bass was a very large man with a large, wide frame. Bass had blonde, shoulder-length hair styled into a mullet, and a beard which covered the whole of his lower face, but it was trimmed close to the skin. Tina, I have told you many times that you shouldn't quit being a pro wrestler just to go to Hollywood, but yeah, I agree with you. He, this looks fun, Bass said in a deep gruff voice. Martial arts room. Wapo. Heya. HOI. A shout came as a male martial artist kicked a sandbag through the air. The sweat dropped from his face while he wrapped a towel over his head. He sighed blissfully before sitting down, allowing his rest to come. No, it's not strong enough. I still need more training, he said to himself. The man had a slightly tanned complexion, and he had spiky dark brown hair, small light hazel eyes, and peculiar-looking eyebrows, going down in a curve with a thin part going up. One other noticeable feature in his appearance was his muscular build. He was kinda buff, with highly defined biceps and arms, broad chest, carved abdominal six-pack, and a muscular back. However, that was all concealed by his yellow jumpsuit that had a dragon emblem on the back. His name was Jan Li and he was a Jeet Kune Do martial artist. Jan had only one reason for training: to get stronger. He had honed his skills and he longed to prove them. Jan snorted and got up before turning on the radio next to his stuff while he rested. Yes, you heard right. DOATEC will be hosting a worldwide, no-holds-barred, fighting tournament. All competitors of all styles are welcome to participate. Be they male or female. The winner will be known as one of the greatest fighters in the world as well as received both money and fame for their recognition. In 1 month's time, Dead or Alive will be submitting applications for people to sign up. I am the head of the Dead or Alive Tournament Executive Committee, Fame Douglas, and I greet all who will come to see who is number one in the world, Fame Douglas said against for the first time across the radio. Jan grinned at this information as he finally had a place to prove his skills against others like him. Well, this has turned out to be very interesting, Jan said to himself as he threw his towel to the bench. Somewhere else. All right, Li Fang, that is enough for now. You have done very well these past few weeks. Keep that up and you will be a master in no time, an instructor said while the female known as Li Fang smiled with a nod of her head. She had a slender and petite build of average height, with pale skin, brown eyes and a heart-shaped face. She was wearing a short training outfit for practice at the moment, but now she was finished and she could rest. Thank you, Sensei. I'm happy for your words. Hopefully with this I can then meet him and thank him for what he did, but also show him just how strong I am as well, Li Fang said, keeping the last part to herself. She just sighed and shook her head while her teacher turned on the television. Hearing something of interest, Li Fang asked for her teacher to turn it up. Yes, you heard right. DOATEC will be hosting a worldwide, no-holds-barred, fighting tournament. All competitors of all styles are welcome to participate. Be they male or female. The winner will be known as one of the greatest fighters in the world as well as received both money and fame for their recognition. In 1 month's time, Dead or Alive will be submitting applications for people to sign up. I am the head of the Dead or Alive Tournament Executive Committee, Fame Douglas, and I greet all who will come to see who is number one in the world, the same Fame Douglas said. Li Fang's eyes beamed and she smiled to herself. Alright, looks like I'll be competing. I hope he will also. You'll join, won't you, Jan Li? Li Fang asked at nothing in particular before she walked off. She would be training tomorrow. A lot more interesting things were going on. Equals 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 Omake. Meeting Tenka and Mikomi. Kurenai version equals 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 equals. Kurenai sighed as she tapped her foot impatiently. She then threw up her hands while Neji's door remained shut. Seriously, it was 1D rank mission to try and find out what was what roar. Why is Neji so scared? Kurenai wondered to herself. This was ridiculous. How difficult was it supposed to be? Kurenai walked towards the large, intimidating walls and sighed. I am a Jonin. I can handle myself just as fine, Kurenai told herself with a nod as she walked through. Nothing yet. Kurenai just continued to walk through the lush green forest around her and enjoy the sounds of birds chirping and animals walking through the woods just like what she was doing. It felt serene, peaceful, nothing could disturb it. R-O-O-O-O-O-O-O-A-A-A-A-A-A-R-R-R-R-R. A shout came that went through Kurenai's spine. Damn her for not bringing any weapons with her to try and protect herself. Kurenai gulped and continued walking for a little longer. She looked out to see a pond and saw her reflection. Okay, something is going on here, Kurenai said before she heard a growl behind her. Kurenai noticed a very demon-like face behind her in the form of a beast while she turned around. She noticed Tenka looking at her with his teeth drooling. Kurenai stared at him impassively before Tenka opened his mouth. Sit. Tenka widened his eyes before he closed his mouth and looked to see Kurenai with a finger pointed to the ground. Tenka raised an eyebrow before he eyed Kurenai's cold glare and gulped. I said, sit. Kurenai commanded and Tenka quickly obeyed. Kurenai then smiled and nodded. There, that wasn't so hard, was it? Kurenai asked while Tenka still seemed uncertain. Both then heard a roar and Kurenai turned her head to see Mikomi charging at them both. Kurenai jumped back while Mikomi growled harshly at her. Both being females, well, the conversation went like this. Stay away from my boyfriend, you bitch. Bitch. Who the hell are you calling a bitch? The one with the stupid clothing. Are you deaf? Huh. This guy is mine, damn it. I saw him first. I don't want him. I'm not even his species. Shut up. Get out. Ladies. Shut up, Tenka. Tenka took a step back and slowly walked away from Kurenai and Mikomi as the two seemed more at odds with each other than before. Let it be known from Tenka. Women, fiend or human, were even more scary than the Vigor Emperor.